Okay, tell me if this makes any sense. Karen crashes a luxury car, then has the audacity to sue the insurance company for her own mistake. And trust me, it backfires horribly. So get comfortable, because this one's gonna be good. Karen sues her insurance company after crashing a Tesla. Legal nightmare ensues. My aunt, who we'll call Karen for obvious reasons, has always had expensive taste, despite never really being able to afford it. She's the kind of person who thinks that just because she once had money, she's now entitled to live like she still does, no matter what her bank account says. A few years ago, she went through a messy divorce. She ended up with a decent settlement, but nothing life-changing, but enough to get by comfortably if she was smart about it. Instead of being responsible, she immediately started spending like she had won the lottery. She upgraded everything in her life: new designer clothes, weekly salon visits, and of course, a brand new Mercedes-Benz that she absolutely didn't need. Karen is the kind of person who thinks that driving a luxury car somehow makes her better than everyone else. She would constantly brag about it, making sure everyone knew she had a Mercedes. The problem was, she did not actually buy it outright. She leased it with sky-high monthly payments and premium insurance costs that she could barely afford. To her, this car was not just a vehicle, it was a status symbol, something to show off to her neighbors, coworkers, and unfortunately, even her family. She would act like she was on the same level as rich CEOs and socialites, but the reality was that she was just a middle-class woman burning through her divorce money at an alarming rate. She had no real job, no plan for the future, and no financial sense. My parents warned her to slow down, but she always brushed them off, saying she deserved nice things after everything she had been through. Of course, her reckless spending was not the only problem. She had a habit of blaming everyone but herself whenever things didn't go her way. If a bill was too high, it was the company's fault for overcharging her. If she missed a payment, the bank was out to get her. If she scratched her car, it was because other people didn't know how to park. And that attitude is exactly what led to her biggest disaster yet. The day she crashed her precious Mercedes and decided that somehow it wasn't her fault. And instead of just dealing with it like a normal person, she did what any entitled Karen would do. She sued the insurance company. Karen's downfall started on an ordinary afternoon when she decided to take her Mercedes on what she liked to call a self-care drive. In reality, this just meant aimlessly cruising through the town, showing off her car while blasting music way louder than necessary. She always acted like the world was her personal racetrack, and she had zero patience for things like speed limits or traffic laws. That day, she was on her phone, yes, actually holding it to her ear despite having Bluetooth in the car, ranting to a friend about how unfair it was that she had to start making bigger insurance payments. She was too distracted to notice that the car in front of her had slowed down for a red light. By the time she realized, it was too late. Boom! She slammed directly into the back of a brand new Tesla. The impact was not catastrophic, but it was enough to crumple the front of her Mercedes and leave a nasty dent on the Tesla's rear bumper. Immediately, the Tesla owner got out, visibly annoyed but calm, and started inspecting the damage. Karen, on the other hand, launched straight into victim mode. She stormed out of her car, not to apologize, but to accuse. "What's wrong with you?" she snapped at the Tesla driver, completely ignoring the fact that she had just rear-ended them. "Why'd you stop so suddenly? You should have been paying attention." The Tesla owner, clearly baffled, just stared at her. It was a red light?" But Karen wasn't having it. She was already pulling out her phone, not to take pictures of the damage like a normal person would, but to call her insurance company and claim that she had been brake checked. At this point, a witness, a man who had been sitting in the car behind her, stepped out and approached them. "Lady, you were on your phone and not watching the road. That guy did nothing wrong." Karen, of course, ignored him. She was too busy spinning her own version of reality. She kept insisting that the Tesla owner had slammed on their brakes for no reason and that her precious Mercedes had automatically accelerated into them. Unfortunately for her, Tesla cars have cameras. As the other driver calmly informed her that he had dash cam footage of everything, Karen's confident expression crumbled. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. "Well, that just proves the car malfunctioned," she huffed. "I'm filing an insurance claim. They need to pay for my damages." And just like that, Karen had convinced herself that she wasn't at fault. Her next move? Filing an insurance claim demanding they cover the repairs. And when they denied it, she decided to sue. Karen wasted no time contacting her insurance company. The moment she got home, she was on the phone speaking to a rep with the kind of exaggerated distress that only she could pull off. She claimed that her Mercedes had malfunctioned and accelerated on its own, causing the crash. She conveniently left out the part where she had been on her phone and ignored traffic laws. The insurance rep remained calm and professional, asking her for more details. When they requested dashcam footage from her car, Karen quickly changed the subject, saying that Tesla owners were known for scamming people and that she had been a victim of reckless driving. Unfortunately for Karen, insurance companies do not just take people at their word. The Tesla driver had already reported the accident, and because his car had cameras, he had solid proof that Karen had been completely at fault. The insurance company reviewed the footage and promptly denied Karen's claim, stating that she was responsible for the damage and she would not receive a payout. Karen was furious. She argued with the rep, demanding that they reconsider. When that didn't work, she asked to speak to a supervisor. The answer was still a no. That's when she decided that if her insurance company would not pay, she would take them to court. Karen filed a lawsuit against the insurance company, claiming that they had acted in bad faith by refusing to cover her damages. She accused them of negligence, discrimination, and even emotional distress. In her mind, this wasn't just about the accident anymore. It was about proving that she was being wronged by the system. When the court date arrived, Karen walked in with the confidence of someone who truly believed that she had a case. She expected to make an emotional speech about how she had been treated unfairly. What she did not expect was for the insurance company to come prepared with an airtight defense. Their lawyer presented the Tesla's dashcam footage showing Karen looking at her phone right before the crash. They also provided traffic camera footage that confirmed there was no sudden stop from the Tesla, only Karen's lack of attention. On top of that, they submitted phone records that proved Karen had been on a call at the exact moment of the accident. When the judge looked at Karen, she had nothing to say. The evidence was overwhelming. Her case was dismissed almost immediately. Not only did she lose, but she also was ordered to pay the legal fees for the insurance company, adding thousands of dollars to her already growing financial troubles. But Karen did not take her loss with grace. As soon as the ruling was made, she turned to the judge and demanded to speak to someone higher up. When the judge reminded her that this wasn't a customer service complaint, she stormed out of the courtroom, muttering about how the system was rigged against her. She left the courtroom fuming. In her mind, this wasn't just a legal case, it was a personal attack. She was convinced that the judge was biased, the insurance company was corrupt, and the Tesla driver had somehow manipulated the entire situation against her. She called anyone who would listen, ranting about how unfair the world was. But instead of sympathy, most people just avoided the conversation entirely. Reality hit hard when she realized just how expensive her mistakes had been. Not only was she stuck paying for the damages to her own car, but she also had to cover the Tesla's repairs out of pocket. She tried to fight the charges, calling the insurance company multiple times, demanding they reconsider. She even went as far as writing a dramatic post on social media, painting herself as the victim of a corporate scam. But instead of support, the comments were full of people pointing out how she had clearly been at fault. When someone mentioned the dashcam footage, proving she had been on her phone, she deleted the entire post. Things only got worse when she tried to renew her insurance. Because of the accident and her failed lawsuit, she was now considered a high-risk driver. Her new premiums were astronomically high, making it almost impossible for her to afford coverage. She tried switching companies, but every single one either denied her application or quoted her outrageously expensive rates. With no other options, Karen made the decision that was unthinkable for her just months earlier. She had to get rid of the Mercedes. She could no longer afford the lease payments, the repairs, or the insurance. She begged the dealership to work something out. But since she had signed a lease contract, she either had to pay the remaining balance or return the car and take the financial hit. She ended up returning the car, leaving her without her precious status symbol. Instead of driving around in luxury, she was now stuck using public transportation, something she had always looked down on. But the worst part? She never learned her lesson. Even after everything, she still tells people that the accident was not her fault. She still claims that the insurance company scammed her and that the judge had a personal vendetta against her. If you bring up the Tesla footage, she'll either change the subject or insist that the cameras must have been edited. To this day, she refuses to take responsibility. And every time I hear her muttering about how unfair life is, I can't help but think back to that moment in court when she demanded to speak to someone higher up. Am I the jerk for not showing up to my friend's birthday surprise for me? Now she's acting like I don't even exist. I'm 21 female. I turned 21 last December, and one of my friends, who we'll call Amelia, wanted to celebrate. She didn't bring me a gift, which was fine. I wasn't expecting anything extravagant. but she did bring me donuts. The issue was how everything went down. That morning she texted me, "Happy birthday, girl. You better not be late because I brought something for you." I appreciated the message, but I was already feeling overwhelmed. Finals were looming, my stress levels were through the roof, and my mental health had been in a downward spiral for weeks. I replied, "Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I might be running late." Immediately, she started spamming me with voice messages, telling me to hurry up. A few minutes later, she sent me a video of her eating the donuts with the caption, "This is what you get for being late." At that point, I didn't even know how to respond. Was this supposed to be a joke? A guilt trip? A passive-aggressive punishment? Either way, I wasn't in the mood for it. I showed up to campus about 10 minutes late and went straight to the library. I needed a quiet place to breathe before my exam. Socializing was the last thing on my mind. I figured Amelia would understand. After all, she knew how much pressure I was under. For context, my birthday is December 22nd, but she only brought me something on December 30th. I wasn't upset about that. Life gets busy, and I didn't expect a grand celebration. But looking back, the irony of her getting upset about my lateness when she celebrated my birthday more than a week late wasn't lost on me. The next day, everything changed. Amelia started avoiding me, acting distant, and giving me an attitude whenever she was forced to talk to me. I had no idea what was going on. At first, I assumed she was just having a bad day, but then things got downright bizarre. One morning, she and my other friend, Jasmina, were ordering coffee while I sat nearby reading. I wasn't paying attention until Amelia turned to me and said, "Hey, unknown, you want something?" It took me a second to process what I had just heard. Jasmina looked at me, then back at Amelia, visibly uncomfortable. Finally, Jasmina tapped me on the arm and said, "Sarah, do you want anything?" That was when it clicked. Amelia was deliberately refusing to say my name. Since then, she has only referred to me as unknown. Every time she addressed me, it was with that word, like I was some faceless NPC in her life who had committed an unforgivable crime. And the funniest part? She's 22, a full year older than me. This wasn't junior high. Acting this petty over donuts felt ridiculous. At this point, I was genuinely confused. Had I unknowingly done something horrible by prioritizing my exam over a surprise donut party I never even asked for? Was this some kind of unwritten friendship rule I had unknowingly violated? It felt absurd, but the tension was real and it was exhausting. Eventually, I decided to be the bigger person. I apologized to her and everyone else involved, explaining that I had been extremely stressed and dealing with mental health struggles. I wanted to clear the air and make things right, but even after that, Amelia continued acting cold. The whole unknown thing didn't stop. Then one of Amelia's friends pulled me aside and whispered, "By the way, Amelia is still really mad at you. She had to fight to get you those donuts because her grandpa drives her to university every day, and he yelled at her for stopping to pick them up." That's when it hit me. This wasn't even about me. Amelia wasn't even upset that I missed the donut moment. She was taking out her family frustrations on me. I knew she had a complicated home life, but I had no idea she had been yelled at for picking up those donuts. That made me feel guilty, but at the same time, she could have just told me. I never asked her to go out of her way for me, and it definitely didn't justify ignoring me, giving me attitude, and treating me like I no longer existed. So, am I the jerk for not showing up to my own little birthday celebration? Not the jerk. She should have just given them to you later. You needed a moment to yourself to mentally prepare for an exam. Some people find support in company, and some don't. She's mad because the validation and attention she thought she had received for doing something nice didn't happen. Plus, feeling like she's sacrificed something to get the donuts for you, arguing with her grandpa. For her to eat the donuts, which again could have been given to you later, is super weird and petty. Then calling you unknown instead of your name, that's just so disrespectful and dehumanizing. Over donuts, that's crazy. Drop her. No one is worth that level of nonsense over donuts. Rude waitress refused to bring my son's drink, so I had my very first "let me speak to the manager" moment. My husband and I decided to take our kids out for dinner at Chili's after a long week. It was supposed to be a nice, casual meal. Nothing fancy, just a chance to sit down as a family and not have to worry about cooking or cleaning for a night. Our kids, especially our son, were excited because Chili's has his favorite thing in the world, chocolate milk. When we arrived, the place was busy but not packed, and we were seated pretty quickly. Everything seemed normal at first, until our waitress showed up. She looked young, maybe early 20s, and had the expression of someone who had already mentally checked out of her shift. No greeting, no smile, no basic pleasantries. She just grabbed her notepad and said, "What do you want to drink?" in the most uninterested voice possible. Okay, fine. Maybe she was just having a rough day. I brushed it off and gave her the drink order. "I'll have a water with lemon. My husband will have a Coke. My daughter wants apple juice, and my son would like chocolate milk, please." She scribbled it down without acknowledging me, turned around and walked off. A few minutes later, she came back with the drinks, except for the chocolate milk. She didn't say anything, just dropped the drinks on the table and started to walk away. I stopped her. "Sorry, but I think you forgot the chocolate milk for my son," I said politely. She looked at me like I had just asked for something unreasonable. "Oh, right," she muttered before walking away again. We waited and waited. Our son kept glancing at the door every time a server passed, looking for his chocolate milk, but it never came. I figured she had just gotten distracted, so when she finally returned to take our food order, I politely reminded her again. "Hey, could we also get that chocolate milk when you get a chance?" I said with a smile. She let out a sigh, like I was personally ruining her night. "Yeah, I know, I get it," she said flatly before walking off again. At this point, my husband and I exchanged a look. We had both worked in customer service when we were younger, so we weren't the type to be rude to servers or have unrealistic expectations. But this was starting to get ridiculous, and it was only going to get worse from there. It became painfully obvious that our waitress had no intention of being even remotely helpful. Every time she walked by our table, she avoided eye contact, moving as quickly as possible to other customers. Meanwhile, my son kept asking, "Where's my chocolate milk?" And I kept reassuring him, "She'll bring it soon, buddy." But even I was starting to doubt that. Our food finally arrived, and sure enough, the chocolate milk was still nowhere to be seen. At this point, I was getting very frustrated. I had already reminded her twice, and I couldn't understand why something so simple was being ignored. When she came back to check on us, I decided to give her one last chance. "Hey, I don't mean to be a bother, but we still haven't gotten that chocolate milk for my son. Could you please bring it when you get a chance?" She exhaled loudly, crossed her arms, and looked at me like I had just asked her to go milk a cow herself. "Yeah, I know. I heard you the first time," she said, completely deadpan. That was it. That was the moment I snapped. "Okay, then tell me what exactly do we have to do to get some chocolate milk around here?" My voice was no longer calm and polite. It was louder now, filled with the kind of frustration that only a parent dealing with unnecessary nonsense can understand. As a matter of fact, "I want to speak to your manager." The second those words left my mouth, I almost couldn't believe that I had said them. I had worked in customer service. I had always sworn I would never be that person. But at this moment, I felt like I had earned my "I need to speak to the manager" moment. And the best part? I didn't even feel bad about it. The second I asked for the manager, the waitress rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. She let out a dramatic sigh and walked off without saying a word. No, "I'll go get him," or "One moment, please." Just pure attitude as she stomped away. A few minutes later, a man in his 40s wearing a manager's name tag approached our table with a polite but tired smile. "Hi, I'm the manager here. I understand there was a concern." Before I could even open my mouth, the waitress cut in from behind him. "Yeah, she's mad because I didn't take her kid a chocolate milk fast enough," she said, arms crossed, like a teenager being forced to explain why she broke curfew. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "No, I'm frustrated because I've asked multiple times, and it still has not been brought to the table. I've been polite, I've been patient, but at this point, I just don't understand why something so simple is being ignored." The manager turned to the waitress. "Is there a reason this hasn't been handled yet?" She shrugged. "I forgot," she said, completely indifferent. The manager blinked at her, clearly not expecting that level of laziness to be said out loud. "Okay, well, that's not acceptable," he said. He turned back to me. "I sincerely apologize. I'll take care of this right away." Before he could leave, the waitress muttered under her breath, "It's just chocolate milk." "Right, and it would have taken you 5 seconds to bring it," I snapped. "Instead, you've been rude, dismissive, and acting like I'm asking you to do something unreasonable. It's literally your job." The manager's expression darkened. "That's enough," he said, looking at the waitress. "I'll be handling this table from now on." She scoffed, threw her hands up, and walked off without another word. The manager apologized again and assured us that he would personally make sure we got our food and drinks without any more issues. He even offered us a 20% discount for the trouble, which I accepted. Not because I was trying to get something for free, but because at that point, I felt like we deserved at least that much after dealing with her attitude all night. Finally, just a few minutes later, my son got his chocolate milk. He looked up at me, took a sip, and said, "That took a long time." Yes, buddy. Yes, it sure did. Am I the jerk? My flatmate wants his girlfriend to stay with us for 3 months, with exclusive use of the living room. A bit of backstory. My friend Bob, who's 24 male, and I, 28 male, became friends in university, and after we graduated, we decided to move to another city for our jobs. Luckily, one of our friend's moms owned a 2-bedroom flat and agreed to rent it to us at a discounted price, about 2/3 of the general rent in that area. At the start, we agreed that I would set up the Wi-Fi and the council tax, while Bob would set up the energy. I got the Wi-Fi sorted before we even moved in and the council tax soon after. Bob, on the other hand, never set up the energy account, and to this day, we have not paid anything toward it because, according to him, the energy company is hard to deal with. When we first moved in, Bob asked if he could have the bigger room since his girlfriend lived 2 hours away and would be visiting occasionally. I agreed because we were friends, and at the time, it seemed fair. Fast forward 6 months, and our mutual friend Anne moved into a flat just 5 minutes from us. Around the same time, I started dating Sarah, who's 26, who lives in another city. Bob quickly fell into the habit of staying at Anne's place most nights, about 5 out of 7 days a week. That in itself was not an issue, but he used it as an excuse to stop contributing to the apartment. He stopped cleaning, stopped buying shared household items, and barely contributed to upkeep. Meanwhile, I had my girlfriend visiting 2 or 3 weekends a month, and I always made sure to clean before she arrived. Bob, on the other hand, would occasionally cook, but always left his dishes for me to deal with. Now we get to the current situation. Anne's flatmate recently decided to move out in April, and Anne can't afford the place on her own. I suggested to Bob that he could move in with Anne since he was practically living there anyway, but he immediately shut it down, saying it was too soon, despite them dating for 2 years. Fair enough, his decision. Then, last week, Bob asked if Anne could live in our flat for 3 months from April to June since she was planning to go traveling in July. I told him I had no problem with her staying and that she didn't even have to contribute to the rent. I was genuinely fine with helping her out. But here's where things took a turn. Bob, after months of ignoring the energy bill issue, finally registered with an energy company. Turns out, we owed £1,300 in overdue fees. We agreed to start paying it off, and our first installment was £100. Then Bob tells me that Anne will be contributing £150 toward the energy debt, as if this was him doing me a favor. I pointed out that Anne's contribution would not benefit me at all since I would not see any of that money. If anything, I was the one doing her a favor by letting her stay rent-free. Then Bob threw another condition at me. Sarah would not be allowed to stay over on weekdays because Anne would feel uncomfortable. This confused me because Anne and Sarah get along perfectly fine. The more I thought about it, the more I realized it was not Anne. Bob just doesn't like people staying over. I told him flat out that his demand was unreasonable. As a paying tenant, I have the right to have guests over. Anne, on the other hand, is not even paying rent, so she has no say in how I use my home. If she's uncomfortable, she shouldn't move in. Bob and Anne are used to having full control over Anne's flat since her flatmate never comes out of their room. I think they expect the same setup here, which is absurd given that Anne is only paying Bob and not contributing fairly. Even if she were paying her share of rent, she would still not get exclusive rights to the common areas. So, am I the jerk for refusing this? And does anyone have advice on how to handle this situation? Not the jerk. Refuse all long-term guests unless they're on the lease. Bob also needs to get current with the energy company or you'll likely see that shut off soon. It's time you had to sit down with Bob and told him that this living situation is not working out. He needs to move into a place with Anne or you need to move out. I know leaving a cheap rent is hard, and if you make a solid case to the friend's mom that owns the place for being the better tenant, you might stand a good chance of having Bob removed from the lease and either finding a better roommate or having Sarah move in. This is a perfect example of why living with friends isn't always as it's cracked up to be. Between him not cleaning, leaving you his messes, not setting up his side of the bills, and now the demands from his girlfriend, it's time you two part ways. If you can shut him off the Wi-Fi until the energy bill is squared away, I'd suggest you do it. My Karen stepdaughter goes to jail, and my wife demands I go bail her out at 3 a.m. in the morning. Not gonna happen. My wife, who's 40, has a 19-year-old daughter, Meg, that's starting her second year of college. Meg attends a state school that's about a 4-hour drive from where we live. She started classes about 2 weeks ago. Meg has taken out loans to pay for her college and lives on campus, so she has no rent and has access to food on campus. She worked all summer, so she has a fair amount of money on her own, but we still provide her with $100 a month to help her out. This past weekend, my wife got a call from Meg at 3 a.m., every parent's worst nightmare because no call at that time is good news. Thankfully, Meg was okay, but she had gotten arrested. Apparently, she had been in a party with friends and got drunk. She walked home with a group, but split off with a couple other friends at some point. This smaller group walked up to what they thought was one of their friends' houses, but it wasn't. The people who lived there did not appreciate the doorbell ringing at 2 a.m. and called the police instead of opening the door. When the cops showed up, Meg and the others ran. Meg got caught and was arrested. She called us from jail and wanted us to come bail her out. My wife practically jumped out of bed and started to get ready. I asked her what she was doing, and she said that we have to go get Meg right now. I told her it's 3 a.m. and a 4-hour drive. If I'm going to be driving that far, I need to get some more sleep first. My wife ripped the blankets off the bed and told me we need to leave now. I got up and reminded her that there are 2 other kids in this house, stepson who's 16 and our son who's 9, that we need to talk to before we leave, and I don't want to wake them up at 4 a.m. to tell them we're leaving. I also reminded her that due to her health issues, I'm guessing she wants me to drive since it's dark out. I told her that she either lets me sleep until at least 7 a.m. or she leaves now and drives herself. I told her that Meg is safe, even though she's probably scared and uncomfortable, but that maybe she needs to feel that way right now. She tried to argue with me, but I told her that I'm not going to fight about this, so she either leaves now or lets me sleep. Thankfully, she let me get some more sleep, but woke me up right at 7 a.m. and told me to get in the car. She apparently hadn't slept and had already told the other kids what had happened, and that we had to leave but would be back later in the day. The entire drive, my wife made comments about how scared Meg must have been and how we should have left earlier, etc. I kept trying to tell her that Meg will be fine, even if she's a little shaken up by this. Then my wife told me that if this was my son instead of Meg, I would have jumped out of bed just like she did. This upset me because I would have done the same thing for my son that I'm doing for Meg. You get arrested at 3 a.m. and want us to bail you out, you're waiting until I'm darn well ready to come get you. But my wife thinks that me sleeping instead of leaving right away was a jerk move. Not the jerk. Actions have consequences, and stepdaughter is learning that now. You did the right thing. Not the jerk. Staying a couple extra hours in jail while she sobers up might be a good wake-up call for her, and it might prevent future instances of getting drunk and doing stupid things. Not the jerk. While it's understandable that your wife was panicking and upset about her daughter being in jail, it's also reasonable for you to want to be rested before making a long drive. Safety should always come first. It sounds like you did consider Meg's well-being by stating that she was safe, even if she was uncomfortable. Getting arrested is a serious matter, and maybe it's a good life lesson for her about making better choices and understanding consequences. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. I would have left her in there a few days. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Am I the jerk for reporting a family for sending their kids to school in our district, even though they no longer live here? My kids and I moved into a new school district last year. Although we live very close to a great school, we were sent to attend another school in the district because the desired school was at capacity. I was informed right now before the school year that my 2 kids were next to be enrolled. The housing issue has slowed movers down to a near halt, and we aren't really living in an area with frequent movers anyway. I found out that a family moved out of our district to our inner city schools, but was also informed their students were still attending the school in my district. I don't know the family, but I don't blame them. The inner city schools are terrible and problematic at best. However, our district is not open enrollment, and they should no longer be attending the school. I called the principal and board of education to make a report, and I was finally informed last week that my kids will be attending our local school, and I breathed a sigh of relief. They will start next week, and this will be a huge burden lifted for our household. The issue comes from the family that needs to pull their kids from the school. They found out I made the call and informed me that while I was doing what's best for my kid, I would have a horrible impact on theirs. Apparently, one of their kids is autistic and thriving with their school. They said that he was nonverbal, but now he's telling his mom, "I love you." I felt terrible when they said that, but I also didn't make them move. They did that on their own. They've been telling people about it, and of course, they all think I'm heartless. Some have said that I'm a jerk, but I wanted to see if I mishandled it. So, am I the jerk here? Everyone sucks here. The fact that the US school system is based on zip codes is a huge problem. We fund education primarily through property taxes, so the more expensive areas have the better schools. People who can't afford houses in those areas are essentially condemned to a substandard education. So basically, the US public school system is the biggest jerk here. The other family in this situation sucks because they were breaking the law. Even if it's a law that shouldn't exist, it does, and they needed to follow it. It's my understanding that many districts will accommodate kids and families with special circumstances. At the very least, before moving, the family should have talked with the district about legal ways to keep their kids in their schools. If they needed their kids in these schools, then they needed to move within the district or find a way to get a transfer back into the district. You suck because you threw another family under the bus. I get why you did it, but it's still a jerk thing to do. Not the jerk. You moved to a home specifically for the school, which is a common thing. The people that moved out of the school district while their kids still attended were breaking the law. I get that it's hard and expensive to raise a special needs kid, but that doesn't justify breaking the law. Your kids have the right to go to that school. Their kids need to attend a school based on their address. Yeah, it might suck, but that's the way it works. Legally, not the jerk, but morally, wow. Best I'd give this is no jerks here, because neither of your families created the scenario where schools don't have the funding to run properly, and both of you were doing what was best for your families. That being said, your decision resulted in your kids going from a good school to a great school, and the other kid, who needs extra support, from a school that could provide that to one that can barely support kids without special needs. Thanks. Well, what do you think? Was OP wrong for reporting the other family or not? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for boarding the plane and leaving without my wife? My wife, who's 43, and I, male 47, have a daughter who's 21 who goes to college out of state. We will call my wife Meg and my daughter Jess. Jess is in her junior year of college. Over the summer, she was employed by our university and was able to stay in the dorms. After summer, she was moving out of the dorms and into her own apartment off campus. Meg and I live in the Pacific Northwest, and Jess goes to school on the East Coast. We usually go to visit Jess a couple of times throughout the semester, typically parents' weekend and move-out day. She also comes home during the holidays. Let me start by saying that traveling with my wife is not a great experience. I'm very type A. I like to have everything organized and make sure that we get where we need to be on time, especially when traveling. My wife is the opposite, very go with the flow, and we will get there when we get there. I do my best to meet in the middle, but not when traveling by plane. Last year, during Parents' Weekend, Meg and I were going to fly out to see Jess. Our flight was at 10 a.m. Our airport isn't huge, but not a tiny airport either. I told my wife that we needed to be at the airport 90 minutes early, and we live about 30 minutes from the airport. This being said, I wanted to leave at the very latest by 8, since we would also need to park and walk a little bit. I, of course, got up at 6 to make sure everything was ready and accounted for. My wife does not like to get up early. It took me attempting to wake her up 5 times before she eventually got up at 7:40, then wanted to make coffee, shower, and eat a bowl of cereal. Let's just say that we didn't leave the house until 9. It ended up being busier at the airport than normal, likely due to many colleges having parents that weekend, and it took so long to get through security that we missed our flight. Rightly so, the airline refused to refund our tickets. We were able to get new tickets, but not until the next day, and missed Friday afternoon and Saturday morning with our daughter. Jess was disappointed, to say the least. Fast forward to now. We were flying down for a long weekend to help her move. We take one flight from our town to a bigger town nearby, then fly from there to my daughter's college town. Again, it was a long morning of me pushing my wife, getting her to move along. Due to the last airport mishap, I wanted to make sure I told her we needed to leave extra early as to not miss the flight again. We got there on time, with a bit of time to spare, and my wife was annoyed. Kept going on about how now we just have to sit and wait for 45 minutes for them to start boarding. We took our first flight and landed in the connecting city at a much larger airport. We only had about 1 hour layover. We got off the plane at 9:15 and our next plane started boarding at 9:40. We had to take multiple rails to get from where we landed to our terminal. We got to our terminal and had about 15 minutes until our plane was set to board. My wife tells me that she wants to get coffee. There was a little market next to our terminal that sold hot food and coffee. I asked if she wanted me to go grab it for her. "No, I want Starbucks," she said. Well, Starbucks was a real ride away and a little bit of a walk. I told her we couldn't do that. We didn't have enough time. She stated that we had enough time, and if I wouldn't go with her, she would go by herself. I tried to discourage her, but she was determined. She walked away at a brisk pace for her and said she would be back in time. 15 minutes went by and she was nowhere to be seen. They started calling boarding groups. I called my wife, hoping that she was nearby, but she didn't answer. They called a few groups, then called ours. In a panic, I called her again 3 times. Finally, on the last call, she answered and said that she was on her way. It was a long line and she had to wait a bit. I told her they were almost done with boarding and she needed to hurry up. I waited by the gate, but the attendant said they would need to shut the gate in 2 minutes. I waited and waited, but she didn't show up. The attendant asked if I wanted to board. Otherwise, she was closing the gate. I tried to plead with her to wait a couple of minutes, but she insisted that she couldn't, so I boarded the plane. A few minutes later, my wife calls me, saying that the attendant won't let her on. They had already removed the boarding ramp at that point. She told me I needed to tell them to let me off the plane to be with her, and I said no. It's not fair to do this again to Jess. I said I told you we didn't have time, but you decided to go anyways. I told her to go purchase a new ticket for the next flight, and I would see her when she arrives. She got to Jess's school and seemed unbothered by the whole situation, didn't even really talk about it. I thought maybe she realized it was her fault and just wanted to drop it. Boy, was I wrong. We're now home, and she hasn't talked to me since the trip, over a week ago, and is insisting that I'm the jerk. So, am I the jerk? Update. As far as how she acts in other situations, she generally doesn't have any issues. She's never one to be late to work or anything like that, or just seems like travel is her poor area. I never noticed things like this until we started traveling often to see our daughter. This is why I never considered ADD or ADHD. She really shows no other signs of this. I saw posts implying that my wife might have an addiction of some sort. I'm not sure how that would line up, but I don't see that being a possibility. I didn't think the following information was important, but my daughter made a comment and so did a friend that I discussed this with, so I thought maybe I would mention it here. Jess is not Meg's daughter. I was married once before, and my wife unfortunately passed due to complications during Jess's birth. I remarried Meg when my daughter was 6. My daughter made a comment that Meg doesn't want to come to see or help her, and that's why she's always running late. But I've offered to go alone, and Meg was always very against the idea, so I don't think that that's the case. Update. I can't say that Meg and Jess have had the easiest relationship. Meg always wanted to have another kid, but we were unable to conceive. She did make comments that she wanted kids of her own, and that caused a little rift in our relationship at the time, because I wanted her to see Jess as her daughter. But they really never had the typical mother-daughter relationship. It was always very much pushed that Jess was my daughter. Meg did make comments about being excited to have an empty nest, but I assumed this was just because we would have more room. Jess is a great kid and really never says anything bad about anyone. But she had made comments before stating that she thinks Meg is jealous of her, but this never made sense to me. She has also told me that she doesn't want Meg to come to her school for Parents' Weekend as she would rather spend it with just me or wait for Father's Weekend. But Meg always says she wants to go and I've never gone without her. This being said, I've never seen any negativity directed at Jess from Meg or resentment. Maybe I'm missing something. Update. My wife finally started talking to me again. When she did, I told her that I wanted to have a conversation about this situation, but I wanted to give it a couple of days for emotions to settle down. Some of the comments here gave me a great idea, and I wanted to see what she thought about it. For all future trips, I will have my tickets, she will have hers. I typically drive to the airport and leave my car in one of the pay lots, so I would drive myself and she can take an Uber. She will have all the freedom she wants to do whatever she wants, but it's up to her to arrive on time and board the plane. I let her know that it was starting to feel like I needed to keep track of both of us. I phrased it in a way to make it sound like I didn't want to be controlling over her and let her manage her own time. She wasn't happy with this, but she reluctantly agreed. Now to get to the bigger issue that I didn't realize we had until reading the comments of this post. Call me oblivious, but I really never thought there were any issues between Meg and Jess. After talking to my wife, she wouldn't admit to any issues and stated that she would never intentionally delay a flight so that we couldn't see our daughter, and acted offended that I would ask such a thing. If that was her actual purpose, I don't think I would be able to prove it, but it will be at the forefront of my mind in the future. After talking to Meg and Jess, we decided the following. Meg and I will be visiting Jess on Parents' Weekend, but I will be attending Father's Weekend from now on, and I will be attending by myself to get some alone time with Jess. Jess seemed very excited, and surprisingly, Meg didn't seem to have an issue with it this time. Thanks again to everyone who took the time to give me advice. I really appreciate it. Goodness, this would drive me crazy. I predict the problem will persist, and the wife will find some way to blame her husband because she clearly has issues taking accountability for her actions. My tenant did over $50,000 of damages and then asked me for a character referral. When my wife, who's 24, and I, 28 male, were starting out, we had a little old rental house downtown that we leased to male students. When we moved out of the country for a job, I figured it would be easier to rent to one family rather than chase around 6 separate broke students for rent, shared bedrooms. The first family that we put in there turned out to be a bad choice on my part. Misty, 40 female, was fine for the first 4 months or so. When I visited in person, the house was noticeably getting gross. They weren't taking care of things. This might have been somewhat forgivable, but then Misty stopped paying rent on time. To make matters worse, there was a plumbing issue that sounded expensive. The toilets were backing up, and sewage was soaking the carpets in the basement. The whole place stunk. I didn't even know why. The plumber ran a camera down the pipes to see what was happening. He informed me that the clog was the result of buildup of needles. You know, the ones that might be used for things they shouldn't be. I opted to pay $1,000 to have them use high pressure to flush out the system. Unfortunately, my house was nearly 100 years old, so the high pressure destroyed the clay connector to the city sewage system. The only way to fix it was to shut down a major residential road and dig to it for $30,000. Insurance wasn't in any hurry to pay either. I didn't have that kind of cash sitting around at the moment, and Misty was still in there. I wanted to evict Misty, but it would be a long process, and I knew that she would fight tooth and nail to stay, as she didn't want to go back to her parents, who lived just down the street. By this point, my house resembled a hoarder's home, and I suspected it was being used for criminal activity. Rather than evicting Misty, I called the health department because they were living with no running water and a porta potty that they rented in the backyard. It was gross. They also had 2 daughters there. It took a visit from a team of sheriffs to get her out, and only after the property was condemned. When Misty later did leave, she left about 100 pounds of rotting meat on the front lawn. She also left the house a giant mess and stole many of my things. I was so relieved that she was gone that I almost didn't care. She was a major source of stress in my life and in my marriage. It ended up taking several hundred hours and over $50,000 to fix up the house. Eventually, insurance came through for part of it. I tried not to be resentful about the situation because being an addict and living in a condemned building is its own punishment. There wasn't anything I could feel good about doing to her. She was already doomed to live poorly based on her own choices. By this point in life, I felt like I was above petty revenge. Besides, she had 2 kids. Oddly, Misty had the nerve to text me to ask for a character referral for a new place since she didn't have anyone else, other than her parents presumably. I was dumbfounded, but text back a thumbs up. Maybe I could save the next guy. Eventually, I did get the phone call from the next guy asking about Misty. He was a jerk to me on the phone. He was talking over me and talking down to me. He was an expert landlord doing his due diligence, etc. I tried to get my story about Misty in, but then I paused. I listened to him talk down to me some more. I'm a total stranger. Why was he acting like this? And then I waited until it was my turn. I told him, you know, Misty was great. I had some major plumbing issues, otherwise she'd still be with me. Also, she's got a cute family. Treat me with disrespect? Good luck with Misty. You 2 deserve each other. Misty got the place and thanked me. Then I never heard from either of them again. Petty me. With the housing crisis as bad as it is, I have zero respect for anyone who chooses to hog up housing for themselves in order to capitalize on others and take advantage of them. And the fact that people are allowed to do this is beyond me. Landlords should really stop posting stories here. Like, we get it. You're rich and see other people as tools to make even more money off of. But when you post on Reddit about how hard you have it being a greedy property owner, you're going to get a taste of your own medicine. Oh look, another rich man using people for profit. I get so sick of hearing about this. Meanwhile, here I am, struggling to afford rent, even though I have 2 other roommates in a 500 square foot apartment. You know, if it hadn't been for Reddit, I wouldn't even know how many people despise landlords. Entitled coworker tries to schedule meetings outside of contract time and criticizes my non-work plans. I have a coworker who's really disorganized and waits until the last minute to schedule things, and so that frequently means calling a meeting at 4 on a Friday. For reference, my 8-hour workday ends at 3, so these meetings make for 10-hour plus days, and because my coworker is so disorganized and unprepared, we frequently have to cover things that should have been done ahead of time, like creating an agenda or desired outcome at the actual meeting. Because these are required meetings, usually once or twice per month, I have to go to them no matter when they're scheduled and get extended pay for working overtime. But my coworker is supposed to give at least a week's notice, and I'd definitely rather have the free time than the money. Typically, if I don't hear by Thursday afternoon that they have scheduled the meeting for 4 on a Friday, I make other weekend plans like hiking or bicycling or going out somewhere. Yesterday, Friday, The coworker attempted to schedule the meeting at 4:45, but didn't put it on my calendar until 3:05. I should have been off by then, but I had an end-of-day meeting that went over by a few minutes, so I was doing a last check of email and then shutting things down for the weekend. I saw the meeting request and responded that that wasn't enough notice for a meeting that far outside the workday, and that I normally would not have even seen the notice until the following Monday, and CC'd my boss just so they knew I wasn't trying to shirk any duties. Of course, my coworker is upset because they're required to hold the meeting by law, and it's the absolute last day to do it without filing an extension, which they've been told by my boss they're not allowed to do unless there's extenuating circumstances, and they've known about it for 2 months. They just didn't plan for it. My boss calls at 3:10 saying, "Can you please do this now and end at 4:10 and we will address it on Monday?" Fine. I was planning on leaving town, but I can leave a little bit later. Coworker responds to my boss by email and says they're using personal time between 3:10 and 4:45, so they can't hold the meeting until then, and that nothing I'm doing could possibly be important enough that I can't attend the meeting at 4:45. Boss calls coworker. Coworker confessed that their kid's birthday party is at 6 that evening, and they have to go try to find a cake and party supplies for the party before the meeting, which is why they're not available. Boss gets annoyed and says that we, boss and I, will do the meeting now, and coworker will have to answer for it on Monday. Boss and I hold the meeting. It takes 20 minutes. I'm out of there by 3:45. Coworker sends me a nastygram by text at 10:15 p.m. saying it's my fault they're in trouble and that they have a kid, so I should understand that people with kids come first, and that my activities and hobbies are pathetic, and it wouldn't have been that hard for me to just attend the meeting they scheduled, and that they'll have to go back and fix everything my boss and I did incorrectly because they like to do it a specific way. My boss had already submitted it. I responded that I hope they enjoyed their kid's birthday party and have a good weekend. They respond that they forgot to invite people so no one came, and thanks for rubbing that in their face. Update. I had a meeting yesterday with my boss about everything that had happened. My boss will be sharing extensive documentation with HR, including their own notes, and I've been asked to pull all of my calendared meetings from the last 6 months and send them to HR. I already had screenshotted them because I had to submit extended hours. Glad I did, because coworker tried to delete them and uninvited me from them when they caught wind that it was an issue of contention. My boss couldn't go into details, obviously, about their course of action with the coworker, but I do know their meeting with HR isn't until Thursday, and their meeting with my boss was after mine yesterday, which was after my workday, but not theirs. Another coworker sent me a text saying that coworker came out of their meeting with puffy red eyes that looked like they had been crying, but otherwise nothing juicy to report. As for the next steps, the one course of action I do know is that coworker will be required to provide a written apology by Friday of this week, and it will be added to their personal file. If my company follows their usual process, which my boss hinted at on Friday, coworker will basically be given the opportunity to resign from their current job and resume their old job. Or they can be administratively removed from their current job and placed in their old job. Their current job is an unfilled vacancy, to take place August 1st, but in the meantime, they will no longer be in charge of the project I've had to work on with them, and our grant department will do it instead. I've not heard from coworker for the apology, but I'm expecting something vague and without much effort put into it, probably by email at 11:59 on Friday, or what I expect is even more likely, they will put it off and claim they need the accommodation to not have to do it and drag it out with HR. Update. I received the apology. Here it is. Sorry for projecting my stress onto you. You didn't deserve to get lashed out at. It's been a rough year with the divorce and getting used to a new job. I'm stepping down in August to take care of me and my kid for a while. I'm sure that gossip is already spreading like wildfire. Thanks for putting up with me. Your coworker. Forgot to invite people to their kid's birthday party? I bet it has been a rough year, what with the divorce and all. I told my pregnant sister that her having another baby would be irresponsible of her. I'm 22 and she's 25. My sister, Mia, her son is 7 months old and the father is not in her baby's life at all. He basically left the week after the baby was born. I've been supporting the both of them financially while my sister Mia gets back on her feet and looks for a job to pay the bills all on her own. Fast forward to 2 days ago, she calls me excitedly, tells me she has big news. Deep down in my heart, I already knew what she was going to say, and my intuition was confirmed when she said she was pregnant again. She went on and on about how she met this new guy she hadn't told me about, and how nice he treats her and the baby, that she really feels like he's the one, and how she can't wait for the family she was supposed to have. I basically laid it out straight to her. She hasn't been dating this guy for very long. and yet she's already pregnant and wanting to marry him simply because he treats her and the baby nicely? He isn't helping with bills or providing in any way. This was not likely to last, and she'll be a single mom of 2. Not to mention how dangerous it is to get pregnant this soon after giving birth. She told me I was being fake and that I wasn't acting like family, that I should support her like our mother is. Turns out our mother is worshiping the ground she walks on, telling her stories about how our stepdad only knew her for 2 months before he married her, blah blah blah. I told her that I can't support her or any other kids should she decide to go through with this. I essentially said, I'm not pressuring you into anything. This is your choice, but I refuse to be financing this choice. You're on your own, Mia. I can't enable you to keep digging yourself in further holes you can't climb out of because of irresponsible, unplanned pregnancies, and I refuse to. Of course, she didn't take that well, started crying and saying how I just don't want her to be happy, how much of a jerk I am, and hung up. Our mother isn't very happy with me now. I do feel bad. I don't think I worded it the best, nor should I have called her irresponsible. I'm just at my breaking point. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You could have worded it better, but you're on the money. It's an irresponsible decision, and she should know better. She's not entitled to your financial support, and you have the right to cut her off. Also, it makes me laugh that she calls you fake because you're the only one being real with her. Not the jerk. And honestly, I don't think she should have been nicer with her words. Her sister is an irresponsible, entitled leech. What does she expect OP to do? Provide for her for the rest of her life while she gets repeatedly knocked up by every true love she meets? Let's be honest, no one thinks this will last. The mother is also delusional. It's nice that her own quick relationship actually worked out, but if she wants the same thing for her daughter, she should be the one providing for her. I assume that's why she's angry at OP. She's eager to support Mia emotionally because that costs nothing, but she doesn't want to spend her money on her. Am I the jerk for telling my sister it's her own fault our family doesn't help her with her kids? I, 21 female, have a sister Chloe who's 32. She has 3 kids who are 8, 6, and 1. She and her husband both work and the youngest goes to daycare. Ever since the youngest has been born, my sister has had a bit of a personality shift, getting more into organic food and holistic living, as she calls it. Chloe and her husband started leaving the kids with our parents for the whole weekend every weekend so that they can get a break. My parents are doting grandparents and seem to enjoy it, but around a month ago they refused to do it anymore. Their reason being that they're too tired to keep up with the kids. They then started leaving the kids with my other sister, Avery, who's 27, every weekend. This had a similar ending. After Avery started refusing, Chloe asked me if I could babysit the kids on the weekends. I stupidly said yes. I only babysat for 3 Saturdays and had to call it quits because Chloe was driving me nuts. First of all, she has a very long list of rules for the kids while they're babysat. Some aren't so difficult to follow, like organic foods only, which is only what Chloe has in her house anyway. But others just feel silly, like no holding the baby for too long and no shows or movies from Disney. Disney? There are more, but this sub has a character limit. When I was babysitting, Chloe would be calling me every 30 minutes, and she gets angry if I don't answer straight away. Every time Chloe came home, she would go off on me over something, anything, not answering the phone quick enough, letting the baby nap too long, etc. When I told Chloe I'd no longer babysit, she got upset and said no one ever wants to help her anymore and her village is disappearing. I couldn't really pretend, and I told Chloe that it's her own fault and people would be more willing to help her if she wasn't a helicopter parent. She blew up at me and said she's demanding basic respect. Not the jerk. Though she's not a helicopter parent, since she apparently only parents 5 of 7 evenings a week and no full days. She's an overbearing, controlling freeloader. Having kids is hard, very hard, but expecting that everyone around you will do that hard stuff instead, and only according to your rules so you can take a break every single weekend is ridiculous. Not the jerk. Chloe is a control freak who doesn't want to actually parent, she wants to control how her kids are parented. Big difference. Tell Chloe if she wants to be respected, then she has to earn it, and she can start by being respectful. Right now, all she is doing is mooching. I would hate to be one of her kids. Not the jerk. It's nice of y'all to help her with her kids, but it's not your job, and you don't have to take her crap from her just because she's your sister. You told her the truth. Just because she's unhappy with it doesn't mean she's a jerk. It just means she has to face the truth and work on the issues she's clearly dealing with. Like her control issues and whatever weirdness she has over her kids watching Disney movies. If she wants a village, she needs to treat her community with kindness and respect, and she needs to consider their diversity and be more flexible. It might be a behavioral thing. Some parents are avoiding Disney shows nowadays because the kids tend to be super bratty and disrespectful, and they don't want their kids following those examples. My Karen ex kicked me out of our house, and we have a 4-month-old baby together. I'm really just looking for any words of advice, consolation, or even a reality check. I'm so torn up right now, and the sadness is eating me alive. We've been together for just over 2 years now. We found out she was pregnant 1 year into our relationship, and after so much back and forth on both parts, we decided to keep the baby. The baby was born 4 months ago, and he's the biggest joy in our lives. I love him with all of my heart, and my partner, well, my ex, does too. And I'm so happy that she's the mother of my baby because I love so much about her, from her beauty and her likes and her dislikes to her imperfections, but most of all, the way that she cares for our baby. I work more than full-time in order to pay our rent, groceries, leisure, clothing, etc. for her, the baby, and myself. I'm working extremely hard to provide her with the ability to be a stay-at-home mother in one of the most esteemed cities in Southern California. I do this because I've assumed the financial responsibility of parenting, and I seek to give the mother the best possible, stress-free life with the ability to be 100% present and available during such a tender time for the both of them. She had been mentioning how she fell out of love with me and didn't feel as romantically engaged in me as before. I tried suggesting this could be due to hormonal changes after giving birth to the baby, while still acknowledging her feelings. The first couple of months after birth, our love life was active and she was deeply in love with me, or so I thought. Things started to decline as I came back to work and was less present around the house. I really wanted to try to raise my son with my partner in the same household. We tried therapy, did a few sessions over the span of 1.5 months, had some insight into our situation, but no resolution yet. It came to the point where she told me that she was completely out of love with me and done trying, that she appreciated all the financial support and how good I am with our baby, but that I lacked the emotional space for her and the baby, which breaks my heart. She told me that she likes nothing about me and actually despises who I am, and that it was a mistake to have a baby with me. She expresses how she is completely romantically detached from me and how she wants to find romance and love again, and that it can't work with me in the picture. She had been consciously keeping my baby away from my parents, his grandparents. They only got to hold him once or twice after he was born. She keeps the baby away from her own mother. She's an elementary school tutor. Meanwhile, my partner's father is home with her every day, caring for our baby while I'm at work, and he's even spending the night at our house. Her father is well-abled, retired, jobless, lives off Social Security, but too prideful to work consistent jobs. Therefore, he has no home or rental. He lived out of a cheap motel until they found that I could house him for free. I'm grateful of how he's able to be present to help my partner get sleep and look after the baby while I'm away, working for the family. Both of them know this. Everything hit the fan after I was told that I needed to pay for my partner to have a running car that was up to date with insurance and registration. I have 2 cars and only drive one daily. Her having a car is a given to me, and I was not trying to hold back this necessity, but they basically forced me into a situation where I had to sell my work vehicle in order to pay for her car, over $2,000, to get her back on the road. I didn't see her car as high priority, considering her father was living with her and was driving her into town every day, and I picked her and our baby up after work daily. I asked if there was any way that I could have some help in this situation, perhaps from her father, and that my work vehicle greatly facilitated my work life. She took this as me not being willing to sell my car and me not wanting her to have a working car. She walked out to her father, who came back angry and aggressive, asking me why I always push back to stop getting in the way of everything and do what his daughter says. I simply told him I have no problem in getting her car up and running, and that I misunderstood just how high priority it was, considering the situation. He told me I had to grow up and got extremely aggressive towards me. Her seeing her father in this state really triggered her, as she views him in a very good light, and almost whatever he says goes in her mind. I was then kicked out of my own home on the premise that she needed 3 nights of space and this relationship wasn't working. It has since been 2 nights. She let me see my son for 30 minutes yesterday. Half of the time he was sleeping. The other half I was trying to spend talking to her. We were in a busy environment and didn't get anywhere. She hears what I have to say, but has no feelings or empathy for me. She says we will do 3 more nights and then we'll see. I'm now kicked out of my house, living on friends' couches, while her and her father are living in the 2-bedroom space with 4 beds that I have paid for nearly 12 months. I can't believe this is my reality, and I'm absolutely devastated that I can't be with our baby or sleep under the same roof as them. As a father and protector, this is my biggest nightmare. Somebody, please give me insight. Get a lawyer ASAP. Look into what rights you have in your area and get everything you need in order to be in your kid's life. Do not move out. She has the upper hand then. She can't keep the baby from you, and that's their home and yours. If you leave voluntarily, she just gets that space to herself. Her dad doesn't seem stable to have around. Write everything down and start communicating via email. Bro, why are you even here? Everyone is explaining to you that you're being a doormat, and your response is, "But I like being a doormat." Then continue being a doormat, but don't pretend like you're asking for advice on how to not be one. What have you left out? This doesn't add up at all. She sounds like something triggered her. You're getting the advice you need and have an excuse for everything. You need to start acting on your own terms. This will only get worse because you're allowing yourself to be a punching bag. Is there more to this story? I'd sure like to hear her unvarnished side of the story. Something is missing from this version. I'm trying to support OP, but he's rejecting all ideas while making it seem like the woman he wanted to have his baby with woke up one day hating him out of nowhere. Wow, you really messed up having a kid with her. Similar situations have happened to my brother, my dad, my best friend, my cousin, and none of them were ever the same. Stories like this reassure me that I made the right decision by not having kids with any of my exes, even though they all tried to convince me to. Every one of them turned out to be the most vindictive, toxic people I had ever known. If only I could have been born 100 years ago. Not having internet or AC would have been a small price to pay for the chance at marrying a loyal and loving person. Am I the jerk for making my husband leave a wedding reception with me? My husband, 34 male, and I, 32 female, have been married for 8 years, and we have 2 kids who are 6 and 4. I'm currently 7 months pregnant with our third. This has been by far my worst pregnancy. Overall, health-wise, me and the baby are fine, no major issues. But the general fatigue and discomfort of being pregnant while also having 2 other kids to take care of is wearing on me. I've also had more nausea and terrible heartburn. As a result of me being tired literally all the time, my husband has had to take on a lot of additional household and childcare duties. He's been great about it, and things are still running smoothly, even though I can do about 1/3 of the household and kid stuff that I usually did. This past weekend, we attended a wedding for one of my friends from college. My husband knows a lot of people in this friend group, and he was really looking forward to some adult social interaction. The wedding was a 3-hour drive from our place, so he got his parents to babysit and booked a hotel so we wouldn't have to drive home and we could enjoy the reception. I felt fine all day up until halfway through the reception. It was like I hit a wall energy-wise and started getting terrible heartburn. My husband was off mingling with people while I pretty much just sat at the table for over an hour talking with whoever came by to say hi. My husband came over to check on me and I told him I wasn't feeling well and I wanted to leave. He asked if I would be comfortable taking the shuttle back to the hotel by myself so that he could stick around and keep socializing. I told him I want him to come back to the room with me in case I start feeling worse so that he can take care of me. He didn't protest or argue with me, but he did give a big sigh in the, okay, fine kind of way. When we got back to the room, I was so exhausted that I fell asleep immediately. He was short with me all morning as we were getting ready to leave. A lot of one-word answers kind of stuff. On the way home, I asked him what his deal was, and he said he's frustrated that I made him go back to the room with me, only for me to fall asleep. He said if he knew I was just going to fall asleep, he would have stayed at the reception for longer. He said this was the first social interaction he's had in months, and with the new baby coming, will probably be his last social interaction like that for months again. I told him that I didn't make him come back with me. I just told him I wanted him to in case I felt worse. I also told him my health should be his priority over any social event anyway. He said that wasn't really giving him a chance because if he stayed, even if I fell asleep right away like I did, I would still hold it against him that he chose wrong. He said he was just enjoying behaving like an adult instead of a dad for one night, and he's allowed to be frustrated that was cut short. It might just be hormones, but his attitude is making me feel guilty about this. You're the jerk. You had heartburn. You weren't in any danger. You ruined his night, and it sounds like you did it out of jealousy and selfishness. You're the jerk. You had heartburn. What exactly would taking care of you entail? I feel sorry for your husband. I can only imagine what his day-to-day life is like living with a princess. You're the jerk. You're a big girl and could have taken the shuttle to the hotel. If you started to feel worse, you could have called him. Seems like this night meant a lot to him and you could care less. Yes, you are pregnant, but it doesn't mean that he is there to be your handmaid. You ruined his night. You're the jerk. Am I the jerk for altering my wedding dress instead of giving it to my sister who can't afford it? I need an unbiased opinion on this because I don't know if I was the jerk or not. So I was supposed to get married 2 months ago to my ex-partner of 5 years. Sadly, we broke it off because he cheated on me during his bachelor party with a dancer. I had this very beautiful dress that cost me around $2,000 out of my own pocket. I had been very depressed since everything happened because I felt it was somehow my fault for not being hot enough or not giving him what he wanted. So last weekend I decided to take my power back and I began altering the dress. I've been sewing for 15 plus years, so I know what I'm doing. I cut it a bit, changed the color to something less wedding-y, and after a week of work, I had a beautiful gown that I could use for more stuff. The problem comes now. I uploaded that picture of the dress to Instagram with a caption that said something along the lines of, "You can change the worst memories," or something like that. My sister hits me up and asks me if that was my old wedding dress, and I told her yes. She then called me and asked me why I had done this. I asked her why it was such a big deal, and she told me that I could have waited till after the wedding. I was so confused. Then she reminded me that when we were staying at the hotel where my wedding was supposed to happen, my mom and sister were there cheering me up, and my sister said something along the lines of, "Oh, well, if you're not using it, I will." We all laughed, so I thought it was a joke because it was never brought up again after that. She just asked me once what material it was, so I assumed she wanted something similar. Now my sister is mad at me, and my mom says she understands our point of views, but that I could have waited 5 more months until after her wedding to take my power back. Am I the jerk? Edit. What is wrong with some of you? Suddenly I'm the jerk for leaving my ex for cheating on me because it doesn't count because it was his bachelor party? Do you know how relationships work? Are you also going to tell me that if he cheated on a Saturday it wouldn't count? Or if he left the country? This is hilarious coming from a sub that says cheaters are the worst people in this world. Cheating is cheating, period. Update. So after being assured that I did nothing wrong, I decided to try to talk it out with my sister. So I tried calling her, but she had blocked my number. I was very confused and talked to my mother. She was trying to stay out of it, and I got a little mad and said that it was not fair, that my sister was not right because she never formally asked me, and how was I supposed to just guess that she wanted it? She tried to justify her, but in the end also accepted that my sister was wrong. Nonetheless, she told me to just give her space and that she will eventually come to terms with it herself. I waited a few days till I met her in the supermarket. At first, she tried to act like she didn't see me, but I planted myself in front of her. She was just rolling her eyes and saying she had places to be, and I just said, "You know, I hope you notice how unfair you're treating me," and then left her alone. That night, I received a call, and she started going off on me for being selfish for about 20 minutes. I asked her if she was done, and asked her if we could talk it out like adults. She came over the next night, and we had an exhausting fight, screaming, crying, and after everything was said and done, she actually apologized for everything. She was kind of jealous of my dress and of the wedding I almost had, and she was embarrassed that she couldn't afford everything I could, and that she felt like she failed as an adult and as a mother. And honestly, I get it. Not because I think she's a failure, but because I get how it feels if your brain tells you failed at life because you don't have things that other people have. She apologized also because she was trying to blame me for her problems and that everything was easier if she wasn't the one to blame. We talked for a lot longer until I told her that she didn't need a fancy dress and that we could search something basic and I could help her decorate it or something. She agreed, and we actually did get to customize a very basic gown. As we didn't have much time, it's not super fancy. Sadly, due to the outbreak, the wedding that was supposed to happen this month was canceled. They had a courthouse wedding where she wore one of my dresses and she's celebrating in August if it's possible. That's everything. So even if I wasn't the jerk and my sister seemed like a brat, she was dealing with some heavy feelings and I still love her. Would I be the jerk if I stopped all support to my sister now that she's pregnant with baby number 2? My sister is pregnant again. She's 18 and this will be her second baby. She's very excited and made a cute announcement party for my parents and me. All 3 of us were just giving each other a hard eye contact the entire time. None of us are happy or think this is a good idea. I'm 99% sure it was planned, She's 4 months in already, so it's a bit too late to be talking about alternative options. Obviously, my parents are talking to her about it and the next steps. But for me, I don't think I want to be involved with either of her kids anymore. Teen pregnancies suck, but they do happen. For the first one, I stayed local for college. I didn't move out, so they had the extra support and income. Heck, I was even working extra hours to help support her financially. The first one was a happy little accident, but this second one feels like a massive slap in the face. Mentally, I feel done. I've had enough. They aren't my babies, and they were not my choice. My sister's having a hard time, as she was expecting everything to continue the same, and for us to be a big happy family. My parents have already had a big talk with her and put their foot down, telling her that she needs to sort herself out and contribute a lot more. She's come to me and told me that she thought they would be happy for her and that she doesn't like their attitude. She doesn't even know my opinion yet. I needed some time to collect myself, otherwise I would have thrown a full-on hissy fit at her. But I think I'm going to move out. I want to stop giving her money and giving her my time and energy babysitting and picking up the odd jobs that are involved with a baby in the house. Would I be the jerk if I just stopped? Oh, I'd really love to have another little baby. It'll be cool. My family will provide me with money, babysitting, etc. Yes, time for a reality check for this immature mother-to-be. You've done your bit. Time for her to accept her responsibilities, not the jerk. Not the jerk. Your sister feels entitled to your support, which you don't owe her. She got pregnant, not you, and against probably everything else screaming in her face that it's a bad idea. Your parents put their foot down, and now you should as well. What about the baby daddies? What is she doing for a living? What are her plans? What the heck? OP. The first one isn't involved at all. The second one, I doubt he's going to be involved either. They argue a lot and don't seem to actually like each other. I don't want to be mean and describe him, but he is easily deadbeat material who drinks his money away. The original idea with just baby number one in the picture was that she focus on school and then goes to a local college after. They have the, I forgot what it's called, just go with it, babysitting room for students. So she would go finish her education and not be completely stuck, get a part-time job, and we will make it work. But that plan's a bit out the window now. I honestly don't know what her plans are now or what she was thinking. The future for her is in limbo right now, and I think that she is messed up in such a way that she won't get out of it. It was actually very kind of you to even have worked extra hours to support her, taking into account that no matter how much of an accident it was the first time, it had nothing to do with you. I'm afraid she took it for granted though. Sounds like her too young brain thought that having a baby is the perfect ticket for getting other support. It isn't. And again, you have nothing to do with this. It's never a must take responsibility for other people's bad choices. Deal with it or find a new job? Easier than you think, bub. As a young adult, I decided to move several hundred miles away on a whim without a new job lined up. Fortunately, the relatives I was living with knew a ton of people in the small town and were able to get me a job within a week at a local grocery store. I was to be a courtesy clerk, bagging groceries and stocking shelves. Immediately, I made friends with coworkers, and some of the customers weren't too bad either. However, management was a different deal. Like the HR manager who would waste a customer's time telling them recipes for the items they have and holding up the line. She would also call me from the back of the store to bag 2 items and help the man barely older than me to his car, despite him protesting. There was also John, the general manager. John would be nice in groups, but if he got you alone, his true colors would show. He once went off on me for having a 5 o'clock shadow, even though I shaved right before work. My hair is dark and grows quickly. Sorry, dude, can't help nature. After a few months, the night janitor, technically early morning, quit. John decided it would now be my job to polish the floors every morning. My previous job was at a movie theater, so working from 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. was normal. Mornings, not my jam. This would require me to be at work at 4 a.m., but I was told this would be for 1 to 2 months tops. I was even thrown a sweet 5-cent raise for my troubles. How could I decline? After a month, I asked John how the search for a replacement was going. He says probably 2 weeks and everything will be settled. After month 2, I ask again. John says the first person fell through and suggests that maybe I know someone who might be looking for a job. I assure him that's not the case. After the 3rd month, I was completely over it. Again, I approached John and explained that I can't keep doing this much longer. He replies, "Not my problem. Find someone else or a new job." This ticked me off, but I wasn't in the position to walk out right then. I figured I'd start applying anywhere I could. A couple of days later, possibly even the same day, my relative drags me with them to look at new cars. While discussing prices and waiting for the sales manager to respond, my relative and the salesperson were just BSing, and I mentioned what John had told me about the job. The salesperson raised an eyebrow and walked away. Moments later, the sales manager approached and said they were looking for a detailer and asked if I was interested. It would be a regular schedule, no evenings, and higher than even my previous theater job as a manager. While my relative was signing financing paperwork, I was filling out a new hire packet. I was to begin work on Tuesday of the next week. When I got home, I packed a bag and began driving to my hometown to visit friends. I knew I wouldn't have to work for about a week because at midnight I called the grocery store and told them I would not be returning to work. If you have any questions, please ask John. Epilogue. A year or so after my departure, John was mysteriously no longer working at the store. Nobody knew why, as he had another 5 years before retirement. One day I had to go to the bank to deposit a check, and John was the teller. It was so fun to watch him deposit my paycheck for my new employer. Am I the jerk for telling my sick mom that I will always prioritize my in-laws? My mom has 8 kids. I'm the 4th. She was a bad mom. She always seemed to hate me in particular. I think it's because I look exactly like my dad, who's not in the picture. Another thing that happened when I was 16, our house burned down. We had to move into a family friend's basement. My mom basically told me to get out and go find a place because it's too crowded here, even though she never said that to my 2 older sisters who still lived with her. One was over 18. The next year, my mom got another house and I moved back in. When I turned 18, she told me I had to pay rent. My other siblings were supposed to as well, but she never enforced it with them. My second oldest sister is in her 30s now and still lives at home. She just sits on her phone all day. I never realized how messed up this was until I met my now wife and her parents. And while I know my mom tried her best as a single mom, she never tried her best with me. That's my therapist talking. Now my mom is trying to repair her relationship with me. She has skin cancer. She got it taken out, but the margins were positive or something. She's not passing tomorrow or anything, but she does need more surgery. She invites me for holidays and calls every few months to rant about my other siblings. She called me last week and asked me to come over this weekend. I said I need to ask my wife what day we're going to her parents' house. She said, "Why can't you set a date with me and then go to your wife's parents' house on the other day?" I told her that I will always prioritize my wife's parents, and they and my wife always get to pick the day. She acted all sad. I said, "Sorry, I didn't mean it like that, but we both know I did." Now my younger sister, who is her favorite, is asking me, "How dare you?" She told me mom called her crying. I said mom's an adult who can manage her own feelings, and I'm not responsible for them. She even tried to call and tattle to my wife. Little does she know, if it were up to my wife, we wouldn't talk to any of them. My sister said that upsetting an older sick person can make them take a turn for the worse, and if anything happens to mom, it's on me now, and I need to call her and tell her I love her. My wife says don't worry about it. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You do what you're comfortable with. She wasn't a wonderful mother to you, obviously. She doesn't get a say in what you do as an adult. She wanted you to leave years ago. Cancer is making her realize how she should have done better, but the damage is already done. New neighbor destroyed my vegetable garden on purpose. We moved into our new house in January of this year. There's a side yard of grass and sod that belongs to our property that separates my house from my neighbor's home. Everything seemed great when we moved in, until I planted a small raised vegetable garden in the side yard, only place in the yard with enough sun to grow veggies. The elderly neighbor was unhappy that I had pulled up the grass and said she was going to get my husband on me. My husband loves my garden and the fresh veggies that we get from it daily. Neighbor was quiet for a few months, happily accepted any produce I offered to her. Then out of the blue, she calls code enforcement on my garden, saying it was full of dead plants. Code enforcement came out, saw a garden with no dead plants and tons of melons and peppers and laughed, said that I was not violating code and my garden looked great. Neighbor wasn't happy that code enforcement did not make me remove my garden, so she proceeded to trespass onto my property and mow over all of my watermelon and cantaloupe vines, destroying all of the melons that weren't ripe yet. I approached her and told her not to trespass or mow on my property. She turned away and walked off without saying anything and continued to mow on my property. The next day, I go to throw some trash in the outside bin, and I see the neighbor on my property spreading poison on my organic veggie garden. I started filming her, told her to stop, and she continued. That night, both of my dogs got very sick. They were throwing up. They had been in my fenced backyard only, not near the front where I had videotaped her doing what she did. So I called the cops. They came and talked with her, told her she could not come on my property. She screamed and had a fit at me in front of the cop. The neighbor also smiled when I mentioned my dogs getting sick. The cop saw her smile and told me to immediately get cameras put up everywhere as my animals didn't appear to be safe in my yard. I didn't press charges as I just wanted her to stop and leave me alone. However, she is now continuing to trespass on my property. It's all caught on video. She literally walked past the no trespassing sign to mow 4 to 5 feet onto my property. My husband wants to let it go. I fear for my 2-year-old daughter's safety and for the safety of my 2 dogs. She is blatantly disregarding the orders of the police officer. I'm a wreck over all of this. I'm going to have to remove all of the poisoned soil and remediate the ground. All of my other neighbors have been super supportive of my plight and tell me not to back down to her bullying attempts. What should I do? Update. Thank you everyone for the thoughts. I will be going to the police station tomorrow to press charges. Why the heck wouldn't you press charges after all of that? My goodness, that's a no-brainer. She is, as evidenced by your OP, she's obviously not going to stop. I mean, you ought to know that. You've asked her how many times already, and she still blatantly disregards and disrespects your wishes. Apparently, this is a game to her. If her smiling after hearing your dogs got sick in front of a law enforcement officer isn't enough to tell you she's a psycho, then I don't know what will. Press charges and press them hard. Your family is in obvious danger. And build a fence with a locking access gate. Good luck. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you report your neighbor to the police again or not? Please let us know. I can't even tell you what I'd do to them. Let's just say they'd be making a Lifetime movie about me, and boy would it be good. Call me a sad, poor person? Well, time to ruin your career. Let me start off by saying that my family is financially stable and have been well off since the days of my great-grandfather. We use the money to fund our charities and put almost all the money we earn back into our business, which is a decently sized attraction ranch that's sort of become a small-town attraction here. We are also not white, but Native American, with my father coming from Mohawk ancestry and my mother coming from the Haida ancestry. We also pay an affordable living wage to all our employees because we value them, and that's how you keep the good employees, and they're like a family to us. Because of this, our family is very well known to the local community. Now, for privacy reasons, I do not use my real name online. I have 2 names, my more traditional native name and my more modern English name. I use my English name online, with my mother's maiden name. My brother and I have very strange and very unconventional English names, as we were named after characters from a movie about a boy, a book, a warrior, and a child empress with an impossibly annoying name. We only use these names when needed, so we both use them for online platforms. Let's say that we are Bastion and Artax. I recently got married, and my partner and I decided it was time for us to look at houses. We decided to look at some houses in the area where we lived, and we thought it was time to speak to a financial advisor. After a few days of waiting, I was able to get in touch with a local advisor my father had dealt with over Facebook, whom I have never met but have heard a great deal about, and he told me that he was holding a Facebook Live seminar later that day about mortgaging and property ownership. I had some time, so I decided to sit in on the seminar. To say the seminar was a joke is laughable at best. The man running it was a former athlete who had been dropped by his minor-level team due to injury, and his only saving grace was finding work for the bank. This I found out on his LinkedIn profile page, which he had sent a link to at the beginning of the seminar while he spoke about his credentials. He had us sit for half an hour before he decided it was time for all of us to participate and had us react to things. Use the hug reaction if you like this, or the wow reaction if you don't. Use the sad reaction for this, or the thumbs up if that was helpful. Eventually, he asked a question about home ownership. Now, technically, I do own a home already, as I have equal ownership of the house my brother lives in, by his insistence, though I think it was just to boost my credit score when I turned 18, and he began to give examples of houses on the market that those in the seminar would be interested in buying. At the end of each one, he would do the react one again, but this time with the anger react if you don't like it, or the laugh reaction if you did. Well, I saw a house that would have been perfect for my partner and I, so I clicked on the laugh reaction. What came next, I was not prepared for. Instead of continuing on with the seminar, the man running it decided he wanted to vet those who said they wanted the houses he had shown. I honestly have no idea why, but when he came to my name, I guess he clicked on my profile and saw my picture. Now, my picture isn't the worst thing in the world. It's just a picture of me in a silly Halloween wig smiling. I'm a goofy person and all my friends know it. He had judged me based on my profile picture alone. He couldn't see my profile because we aren't friends, yay for privacy settings, and said the following. Why is there always at least one sad poor person with a weird hair color in these seminars? They're for actual people who want to actually buy a house. You can go back to wherever you came from and buy a house with whatever money they used there. Now, what the advisor hadn't known was that I had been recording the seminar through my computer so I could show my partner what had been said. They were out of the house at the time and had asked me to record it for them on my computer and to go through it with them when they came home. To say I was upset by this was a slight understatement. I was mad, not for me, but for others this guy had probably treated this way. He had based a decision solely on the way I looked, without knowing me, my financial background, or anything else about me. How many others had he done this to? Then a thought came across my mind. This is a man who had dealings with my father, his friends, and their friends, all of which had their investments in the bank that he worked in. Now, I wasn't a member of said bank, but I had been planning on using them when the time came for buying a house. I wanted to get back at this guy who had treated me so poorly, and I wasn't even a customer. Now it was time for the pro-revenge. I started off by calling my parents, both of whom have sizable investments in the bank as well as business accounts with them. I told them what had happened and sent them the recorded video where you could clearly see my profile in the shot and what he had said. I swear, I saw my father turn as bright as a red LED light, and my mother tried to calm him down, as she usually does, but I knew it was no use. My father left to call his friends, while my mother made sure I was all right. I am. See, my parents were one of the two big accounts at the bank where this advisor worked. The other belonged to one of my dad's longtime friends and the father of one of my best friends. I told my parents that I just wanted to make sure that they hadn't been treated like I had been, since my mom often dyes her hair crazy colors when we do fundraising at the ranch, and my dad has had to give himself an undercut for a few years due to needing surgery, and he has hair longer than I do. I wouldn't know the repercussions of this one phone call until the next day, when my dad showed up at my current residence and told me he was taking me out for the day with his buddy. I said I'd go with them because you do not say no to two giant 6'10" native dudes who handle horses day in and day out and are built like brick houses. I got into the truck and we drove into town. We arrived at the bank after a quick stop to Starbucks, and the three of us entered. My father and his friend were immediately greeted by the greeter at said branch, and the first thing my father's friend says is that he wants to meet with the branch manager ASAP. My father says the same, and the three of us wait as she gets the manager on the phone. The bank manager, who I have met before, greets the three of us. My father tells me to wait in the lobby, and I watch as they disappear into the manager's office. Now, what I'll tell you next are the words that came straight from my father's mouth. As the three of them sat in the manager's office, both my father and his friend say that they're going to close all of their accounts, effective immediately. All the stocks, investments, business accounts, everything will be closed by the time they leave the office. The branch manager is stunned and asks why, to which my father pulls out his phone, and he plays the video I had sent him to said manager. My father says the manager looked as white as snow when he saw it, and immediately I could hear this from the lobby, yelled out for said financial advisor to, and I quote, "Get in the office right now." That's when I saw the advisor who had belittled me online run into the office. The manager asked the advisor to explain himself, to which the advisor tried to play it off as a joke. My father and his friend told him they had the entire recording of the seminar, and that no, he wasn't joking, and they were now pulling all their accounts out of said bank. The advisor, now seeing he had been cornered, practically started begging them to stay, saying that he will apologize to me and that it was all taken out of context. My father looked to his friend, who then said, "Sounds like something a sad poor person would say." He then made sure his accounts were closed and everything was set before he left the office. My father did the same as the advisor began to tremble. Before he left the office, however, my father extended a hand to the advisor and said, "I think you might have forgotten who I am. I'm Dad's full name, father of Artax, mom's last name. We left, and a few weeks later, I saw the same advisor as I was walking into town, behind the cash register at the Starbucks. I believe he saw me when I walked in, because he suddenly had something to do in the back room and didn't leave until I left the store. Karen parks illegally, taking up 2 disabled spaces, learns a very expensive lesson. I have a disabled parking placard, and a few weeks ago I went to Target to get some things that I needed. Not only were all the spaces taken, someone had parked their gigantic Escalade on the line between 2 disabled spaces, taking up both of them. Wholly irritated because this happens so often, I walked around the car, no placard or disabled plate. Cue the fury of someone who has to deal with this kind of stuff all the time, and cue petty revenge. I took a pic and went inside to find a manager. When I found one, I showed her the photo and she rolled her eyes and sighed. Apparently, this happens a lot at their location because it's near an affluent town with a lot of very wealthy, very entitled people, and most often it's the owners of huge SUVs and F-150s that park like jerks. She said she'd call the cops, so I decided to go back outside and hang out by the doors to watch the show. The manager joined me and we chatted while we waited for the police. The cops arrived and walked around the car, peering through the windows and running the plate. One cop took out a little book and started writing in it. They took some photos, and one came over and asked if they'd make an announcement in the store to get the driver outside. The manager radioed someone inside, and they asked them to announce the make and model and plate of the car over the PA system. A few minutes later, she came charging out of the store. Middle-aged, well-dressed woman, the common Karen of North America, and already yelling at the police. As soon as she got to her car, one of the cops held up his hand to shut her up and started lecturing her. I was too far away to hear, but she stopped yelling at least. The cop spoke to her for a few minutes, and then the other cop with the little book handed her but 2 papers. She looked absolutely insane. The cops came back over and spoke to the manager, saying that they ordered her to move her car, and if she didn't, or if she caused more problems in the store, to call them back and they'd tow the car. They told us they gave her 2 tickets, one for each space, at $500 each. Ouch. The manager thanked the police and me and went back inside. The woman stomped around a bit before getting in her car and peeling out. The cops looked at each other, then got in their cars and followed her. Pretty sure she continued to have the day that she deserved. Meanwhile, I happily treated myself to some Legos for performing a public service. All my friends think my girlfriend is creepy. Are they right? I, 22 male, started dating my girlfriend, let's call her Alice, 21 female, about 7 months ago. We met while working on a group project for one of our college classes. From the moment I met her, I felt an instant connection. She was beautiful, smart, and we shared a bunch of common interests. Long story short, we flirted for a few weeks before I finally asked her out, and we've been happily going out since. Now, here comes the problem. About a month ago, my friends and I were planning to hang out, and I invited Alice. While me and Alice are from the same hometown, we met during college, and a majority of our relationship has been during the school year. While we know each other's college friends, we had never met each other's hometown friends. I know that Alice has really bad social anxiety, so I was hesitant to invite her at first, but when I did ask her, she seemed nervous but really excited. The party seemed to go really well. Alice was smiling and laughing the whole time, and even got to go on a rant about a topic she really liked. When it was over, she even told me while I was taking her home how much she liked my friends. When I asked my friends what they thought of Alice, they all said she seemed nice, all except my best friend, Ruben, who's 22. When I asked him, he told me that he couldn't stand her. I immediately questioned why, hoping it was them not mixing well, as I can acknowledge that Ruben and Alice are complete opposites when it comes to interests and personality. But Ruben told me he couldn't stand her because of how creepy she is, and I was better off dumping her. Now this threw me off, as I had never once considered Alice creepy. She's actually the cutest girl I'd ever met, and I've never felt more comfortable around someone than I do around her. Before I could even ask what he meant, he went off on a rant about how uncomfortable she made him feel, and started citing stories I told him about our dates during college. Stuff like how she'd stare at me without saying anything, and just enjoyed looking at me. How she eats the same meal whenever we go out to dinner. How unjealous she was when a girl came up and flirted with me. Or about her deep knowledge of mysteries and true crime. Both of which she could talk about for hours, but neither of which she actually talked about at the party. He said that while he wrote them off before, since they didn't seem to bother me, which they don't, but that after meeting her in person and seeing how weird and flighty she was, He can tell that she's a secret psycho and will end up either breaking my heart or just hurting me. I tried to explain to him how any weirdness was probably because she was so nervous about meeting them for the first time, but he insisted that we've had friends' significant others have anxiety before and that she was just plain weird. I blew him off at first because he sounded crazy. Alice isn't perfect, but she's far from creepy. But after 2 weeks of him telling me to dump her and me getting tired of telling him to drop it, I reached out to a few of our friends to prove him wrong. But to my surprise, they all agreed that Alice was creepy. Most of them said the way she spoke really threw them off, which is fair since Alice can be weirdly formal sometimes, but I didn't notice her doing that at the party at all, and typically it's much more funny than unsettling. Most of my friends told me it wasn't enough to break up with her since they still genuinely found her sweet and fun to be around. But I did have one friend say that it was worth breaking up over, and he was just too embarrassed to tell me at first. I have no plans of breaking up with Alice because all the stuff they're calling creepy I find cute when she does it. But are they right? Is it creepy that she does that stuff? Should I talk to her about it? Should I tell my friends to buzz off and ignore their concerns? I feel bad for even questioning about this, but with all of my friends agreeing, it's starting to gnaw at me, and I just need some clarification if it's actually creepy or if they're just being dramatic. Update. Since I posted originally, I spoke with each of my friends individually, and I talked to them about what they said. Pretty much all of them apologized, and some even offered to apologize to Alice herself, which at the time I said no since I didn't really want them interacting with her, but we'll get back to that later. The only one who didn't apologize, as I'm sure you guessed, was Ruben. I want to address some comments suggesting that Ruben could either be attracted to me or maybe even Alice. I don't think either of those are true, as Alice is the first girlfriend Ruben has ever acted like this with, even though I've dated plenty of girls, and Alice isn't his usual type. He may still be attracted to her. I mean, she is gorgeous, but I've known the guy since 3rd grade, and so I know he's pretty picky about the girls he's into. So I don't think that's the case. I think he's just a major jerk. I've known Ruben literally my whole life, since our moms were college friends and moved close to each other when we were young. With so much history, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt by just asking him to drop it since I really didn't care if he found her creepy. I really like her, and he'd just have to deal with it if he wanted to continue being friends. He didn't apologize or even say he was wrong, but he did agree to stop commenting on it, which isn't perfect, but it works for now, as I consider if I really want to continue being friends with him. Yesterday, I met up with Alice for a casual date. It wasn't anything fancy, just a home picnic. I have really bad allergies, so we couldn't do it outside. We had some candles and our favorite foods, and we watched movies and dissected our favorite tropes. About halfway through our 3rd movie, Alice brought up Ruben since she heard about an upcoming car show and auction her dad told her about, and she remembered me saying that he loved vintage cars and suggested the 3 of us and a friend of hers who was also into cars could go together so she could get to know him better. It felt crazy that she had suggested this days after mine and Ruben's fight, and it made me feel sick with how sweet she was being to a jerk. I gave her some weak excuses about how she hates car shows and doesn't have to do that, or how Ruben wouldn't be comfortable doing that. My girlfriend, being the angel she was, said she could tough through it, or even just let me and Ruben go together if he wasn't comfortable with her yet, or she'd even pay for the tickets because it was a private showing. This was the point I broke, and I told her everything that happened. She took it really well, just calmly listening while I rambled through my explanation, and she even apologized to me about weirding out my friends. I tried to explain it wasn't her fault and she didn't need to apologize. As a lot of you suspected, she ended up telling me how she believed she was autistic, but since she hadn't gotten an official diagnosis, she wasn't comfortable telling people that. After a lot of guilty back and forth between the 2 of us, she told me she didn't want me cutting off my friends since they did apologize and didn't say anything cruel, just pointed out her neurodivergent tendencies, which is not an insult to her. But I put my foot down that I for sure won't be bringing her around Ruben anymore, and I plan to distance myself from him and my other friends for the time being, which she agreed was fair. She also wants to meet up with my friends who want to apologize to her since they seem genuine in their regret. Overall, things turned out pretty well, and thank you so much for your input. Anyone else think that Ruben was talking to the other friends about Alice? Just seems to me that if they were all okay with her at first, and then later agreed with the creepy description, that maybe someone's been in their ears, reframing any of her personal quirks. Alice sounds like a stand-up girl, and she seems really sweet. OP might have just found the perfect one. On a side note, OP's friends really feel nitpicky, especially Ruben. I have a feeling Ruben is jealous about the 2 of them, but who really knows? I found something my ex-husband accused me of destroying, and I returned it. My marriage, we were both in our 30s, this is important, had problems right away. One of the manifestations was him going off on me for not going to an elite university. I went to a very good undergrad and an even better grad school. Had not finished at that point, but he went to one of the best schools in the country, known for graduates with a chip on their shoulder. That was really all he had on me, and I would just laugh. Even his parents told him he was being a jerk and sounded like an idiot because I had an impressive education, something I had never felt the need to discuss before. So anyway, he became really competitive about his college, and especially his friends from college. Very few he was still in touch with. This was before Facebook. And he had this photo box full of memorabilia. Cardboard, no lock or anything. I had a dozen or so myself. A normal thing would be to go through his and mine together and share memories and stories and bond. I didn't really care about what was in his box, and college stories are boring when you weren't there, but I would have listened. But the box became a symbol of everything wrong, with him constantly saying I'm not good enough for his college friends. At some point, he forbid me to look in the box. Of course, I didn't take this well. He kept telling me I wasn't good enough to see what was in the box. It got brought up in every fight, like a death spiral of, "You're jealous of my friends. Your friends suck and I wouldn't like them anyway." Fast forward through years of fighting. We moved on to more spectacular fights, and the box fell pretty far down the list. Then for some reason one day he went up to the attic and couldn't find his box. He said I threw it away because I was jealous and petty. I didn't, but after a few years of this, he managed to convince me that maybe I did. "And you threw away my box," went back into heavy rotation. I begged his forgiveness and fell into deeper depression over the depths to which my life had sunk. Finally got a divorce. Cops, ROs, the whole nine. I healed and moved on. Years later, I sold my house. It was mine before, and when I was packing up, I found the box. I had such an emotional reaction, my legs buckled. I sat on the floor and wept. My boyfriend was really sweet about it. He didn't know about the box. It's so ridiculous, and I was so ashamed, but mostly I had put it all behind me by then, until it all came rushing back. I called a mutual friend and asked him to come get the box so they could give it to him. People suggested I should throw it away out of spite, but I had something to prove. Before I turned it over, I put copies of 2 unpublished essays I wrote about what he did to me, along with a handwritten note. "I sold your Dungeons & Dragons books." I just found out that my husband was married when we started dating and had our baby. My husband and I just celebrated our 4th wedding anniversary. We have a kid together. Long story short, I recently found out that my husband was not only married when we started dating, but his divorce wasn't actually finalized until our son was almost 6 months old. I know this story sounds weird, but 6 years ago I started dating this guy. He was from somewhere else, but he was in my town for a year-long military assignment. He told me he had a horrible ex-wife who cheated on him for over half of their 10-year-long marriage. I felt so bad for him, and all of his friends and family members corroborated his story and told me how great he was and how awful she was, etc. This guy moved in with me very quickly because his room on base was disgusting and moldy, and despite being on the Nuva ring, I ended up getting pregnant, and he proposed a few months later. It all happened super fast, but I was wildly in love, and I didn't think anything was wrong with my happy little family until one day, out of the total blue, I received a Facebook message from his ex-wife, calling me a homewrecker and calling my newborn son names. I was so confused. This guy was definitely not married when we started dating, or so I thought. I never replied to her message, but I confronted my then fiance about it, and he assured me that she's crazy and she's the one who had cheated on him, etc. Again, all his friends and his mother verified his story, saying his ex-wife was the cheater and their marriage was 100% over when he and I got together. So anyway, flash forward to a couple of months ago. Hubby and I just celebrated 4 years of marriage, and I thought everything was great. I loved the life that we had built together, and I had entirely forgotten about the ex-wife thing. One day, out of the total blue, I had this weird feeling that I should check her Facebook page. Again, it had been years since I had even thought about this woman, and I have no idea what compelled me to check her page. So anyways, I went to go check it, and several months before, she had written this awful, scathing post about me, calling me and my son all kinds of names, and saying that soon my husband is going to do to me what he did to her, because he's a narcissist who doesn't care who he hurts. I sent her a message saying I was so sorry that she misunderstood what happened, but I was certainly not a homewrecker, and my precious son is definitely not the name she was calling him, and I asked her to please take down the post. She responded, "No, leave me alone." And I said, "I'm not super inclined to do that unless you remove the post." Again, I'm so sorry for any misunderstanding, but he and I didn't start dating until this date. Much to my shock and dismay, she replied with lots and lots of proof that they were indeed still married at that time. I started digging and found his divorce record. It does say that he was not legally divorced until our son was nearly 6 months old. I guess I now understand why he wanted a 2-year-long engagement. So anyway, what do I do with this info now? If I confront him about it, he will obviously know the info came from her and he'll be angry with me for messaging her. I've been trying to pretend like I don't know and that everything is fine, but it's eating me up. He has obviously lied to me about this before, repeatedly and to my face, so if I confront him, I feel like he's going to lie again. I now know that I can't trust him. I don't think he's lied to me about anything else, but if he would lie about this, what else would he lie about? This is a big lie. I do now worry that he will do the same thing to me, like his ex-wife's post said. I do also think there could be, and probably is, a lot more to the story. Maybe she did cheat first. I don't know. But even if she did, and even if him getting with me was retaliation for her actions, I'm not at all sure that would be enough for me to trust him again moving forward. This is just over, right? I don't know how to get past all of this. I've always told my friends to never date a cheater because how you get them is how you lose them. Tell him in a public place that you found out he was still married when you got together, and if there's anything he can tell you that might make you trust him again, now's the time. If his reaction is to get angry with you or to argue with you or otherwise deflect, then you should take that as a confirmation that he has no defense for what he did. You don't have to sit there and argue with him or defend yourself. Nothing you did is worse than what he did. You don't have to convince him of that. You just have to stand up and leave and move forward with your own plans, which should include prioritizing your kid and getting a good lawyer ASAP. You should also be prepared for the possibility that he may just lie. If he starts offering some sob story to justify his actions, listen to your gut. Don't tell yourself to just accept a story that doesn't feel right or doesn't make you feel secure or doesn't totally make sense. I'm sorry you're going through this. Good luck. He lied to you, and so did his family. Big lies. You need a job and your own savings account in a bank he doesn't have access to. You should be prepared. Question: was he legally divorced when you got married? Before you confront him, I would seriously consider speaking with a divorce attorney. You want to make sure you're fully protected, and the best time to do that is before the other party is aware you know of their lies. I would also speak with my attorney about the conversation with the ex-wife and turn over copies of that conversation for them to hang on to so it can be deleted off your devices. You don't want him to snoop through your accounts, find something, and angrily take it out on you. Well, what do you think? Should OP divorce her husband or not? Please let us know. Oh, I'm on private property? I used to work for a supermarket chain, and quite often I'd be asked by management to work at other locations. Most of the time this wasn't a big deal. I was happy to help out. It gave me an excuse to drive and have the petrol paid for. However, one day I was asked to work at a location very far away at the very early hour of the morning. I initially refused on the grounds that I would have to wake up at around 2 a.m. in order to have a shower, breakfast, and drive to be there on site at 5 a.m. After some arm-bending from management, I finally relented and begrudgingly agreed I would do it. Due to the drive not taking nearly as long as I initially expected, I arrived on location at about 4:30 a.m. I waited in my car with the music playing. At 4:50 a.m., I get a loud knock on my car window, nearly making me jump out of my skin. It was the manager for that store, who, never seen me before, didn't know who I was. The conversation went as follows. Manager: "You need to leave. This is private property." Me: "Oh, but..." Interrupting me: "I don't care. Go, now." Me, quickly realizing I can play this to my advantage: "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I don't want any problems. Of course, I'll go. Right away. Sorry." As per his request, I drove home with a smile on my face, knowing that I have the rest of the day free to myself. A few hours later, I get a phone call. I answer the unrecognized number, and I recognize the voice immediately. It was the manager who told me to leave. Manager: "Hello, I'm looking for OP." Me: "Hi, yeah, that's me." Manager: "This is management calling from the store. I was expecting you to work with me today. You should have been here at 5 a.m. Me, trying to sound casual: "Yeah, I was there waiting in my car. You told me to leave, remember?" "But you didn't say..." I interrupt him. There's no ifs or buts. I was on private property and was asked to leave. I was legally obliged to do so. Yeah, but don't you think… It doesn't matter what I thought. I was asked to leave private property. I'm not going to break the law and risk getting into trouble with the police. It was at this point he hung up on me. I expected to get in trouble for what had happened, but I never heard anything more about it. This was a few years back now, too. It's one of my favorite stories to tell. I hope you enjoyed it. Am I the jerk for demanding my husband quit his job? A year ago, my husband got a really great job. He loves it. It more than doubled our income. The problem is he's never here. It requires a lot of travel, and he's gone more of the month than he's home. We have 3 kids who are 8, 6, and 3. We have 2 dogs. I am run ragged. I don't have any family to help me. I don't have time for friends. It's never ending. Cleaning, kids, cooking, dogs, school, cooking. No time for me whatsoever. Before my husband got this job, we worked opposite schedules. I worked in a restaurant/bar in the evenings. Didn't pay great, but a couple really good friends worked there with me. It was how I socialized. Now that he's gone, I couldn't work that job since nobody watches the kids at night. Now I work a part-time retail job that I hate with coworkers who are essentially kids compared to me. I don't get to socialize like I used to. I only work the hours my kids are in school. But we have after-school activities, homework, dogs, dinner, never-ending chores, etc. There's no time for me. I don't even get to sleep alone since my 6-year-old has night terrors. When my husband was here, things felt more divided. I still did a lot during the day, but it wasn't never-ending. There would still be days I didn't have to worry about lunches or bath time or homework because my husband would pick up the slack. I could go out with friends from time to time. Don't even get me started on what it's like when the kids get sick, and then I inevitably get sick too. It's absolute misery, and he's not around to see it. I'm left drowning. But he doesn't want to quit. He loves his job, and that's fair. I can see he's way happier now. But what about me? Don't I matter? I don't know how I'm supposed to get through this. I demanded for the sake of my sanity he quit his job, but he exploded. He thinks we're doing better than ever. We could get a bigger house soon. We live in a 2-bedroom rancher, but I like it. That the kids will have so many more opportunities, etc. And he's not wrong. But what about me? Am I the jerk? Update. I just got off the phone with my husband. We talked for a while. Naturally, he's quite upset and is rather defensive, but he is very sorry. That's not an easy thing for him to say, yet he said it very clearly multiple times. He's going to try to catch a flight home tomorrow. He's going to take a week or 2 off work to help me get some things set up in place for me, help around the house, and some babysitting. He encouraged me to take some time off work as well and to just stop thinking about finances for right now. He said he'll deal with it for a while. He says whenever I go back to work, it won't be like it was. He will help me. He'll make sure I have some extra money and extra time. I would cry with relief. I am crying with relief. If income is doubled, it's time for some hired help. Why not hire childcare and/or cleaning services a couple of evenings a week? No jerks here, but hire regular house cleaners, order a meal kit subscription service, work smarter, not harder, hire a babysitter from time to time, and meet with friends. Yeah, of course he loves it. His responsibilities just got halved. Quit the job, then you'll have time for you. He doesn't want to quit, then you quit. If you're doing better than ever, then he can afford to get you a babysitter from time to time while you go out for an actual social life. Or you can have somebody come in every week or 2 to at least help you keep your home in order and at least take a little off your plate of responsibilities. Not the jerk. You're the jerk. How about you 2 switch it up? You could go earn a high income to provide for the family and let hubby stay home with the kids. Something tells me he'd be able to get them to school on time and vacuum the house here and there since it's just too much for you to handle. And you gotta love these idiots that always say to hire help. These stay-at-home moms who complain on Reddit don't need hired help. They just need to stop so much TV and wasting time on Facebook. Well, what do you think? Should OP's husband quit his job or not? Please let us know. The old bait and switch. Once upon a time, I, like many people after the new year, joined Planet Fitness with my girlfriend, now wife. We did not go to the gym, and this continued now that we had a gym membership. After a year or so had gone by of not going to the gym, we decided to go in one day just for something to do. They wouldn't let us in due to the card that we used for my wife's membership had expired, and our account was due over $100. They agreed that we could go in as long as we got it under $100. We paid the remaining amount and canceled her membership. switching mine to a premium membership so that we could both get on using mine. After probably another year of them collecting my money for little in return, I joined the Army as a way to escape the ever-rising cost of family health insurance. I thought, this is great. Now I have a reason to work out, and I'll use my Planet Fitness premium membership that lets me use any of their gyms around the country. However, upon moving to our first duty station, I found that 1. I worked out every morning with a group of people outside, and 2. There are several gyms on base, usually nicer than Planet Fitness. So I went to cancel my membership, and here's where they really upset me. Oh, you have to cancel in person at your home gym, or by writing a cancellation letter via first-class mail to your home gym. The problem being that my home gym was over 700 miles away, and I didn't want to wait long enough for them to get the letter and process it. I left and began my Planet Fitness contract research. Armed with knowledge, I returned to the closest store the next day. Good morning, sir. Oh, good morning. Can you help me out? I don't necessarily want to pay for the black membership anymore, but my home gym is in Ohio. Can I change my home gym to this one? Of course, sir. I'd be happy to assist you. Once all the exchanging of information had been completed, I dropped the bomb. Is there anything else I can help you with? Yes. Actually, since this is my home gym now, I'd like to go ahead and cancel my membership. Her jaw actually dropped. She called a manager to give the overrides or whatever he needed to do. He got the whole story, looked at me, and said that I would have to wait 24 hours since I just changed my home gym. I obliged his request and came back the next day. I'm happy to say that it's been almost 5 years since my last gym membership. Am I the jerk for telling my stepsister it's not my fault my dad doesn't love her? I'm 24, female. My dad is married to a woman I'll call Melissa, and they've been married for 13 years. Melissa has a daughter, Sarah, who's 25. I didn't live with my dad full-time growing up. My parents had shared custody, but it was pretty flexible, so I'd spend on average 2 nights there a week, and my dad would normally take me to dinner 1 evening a week. I have never had much of a relationship with Melissa, but we've always been friendly. Sarah, on the other hand, has always been jealous of me and my relationship with my dad. Anything I was doing, she wanted to do. Anywhere I was going with my dad, she wanted to come along. My dad always handled it, but I was always aware that she was clearly unhappy when I was around. My dad and I spoke about this more than once, and my dad expressed that he found Sarah always expecting things from him a bit stressful, and that he had brought it up with Melissa, but it didn't seem to help. I haven't seen Sarah much in the last few years since I moved away, but I recently got engaged, so my fiance and I had dinner with my dad, Melissa, Sarah, and her fiance to celebrate. My dad made a toast and said he'd like to pay for the wedding. He then presented us with a check. I thanked him, but said we will be paying for the wedding ourselves. My dad said he wanted to contribute to our lives in some way, and my fiance suggested we could put the money into a trust for our future kid. We then continued on with dinner. The next day, I got a call from Sarah, who said I should split the money my dad gave me for the wedding with her. I was confused and asked why, and Sarah said that my dad is a father figure to both of us. I told her if my dad wanted to give her money, he would have, and that it has nothing to do with me. Sarah started getting mad and said that I should share the money since I didn't need it. She went off on me, called me mean, spoiled, a gold digger, all sorts. She then said that it was my fault she never had a dad, and I need to share the money and admit that my dad is her dad too. I was just getting so annoyed, and I said, "It's not my fault he doesn't love you. If you want money from him, go ask him," and I hung up on her. I guess she did ask him because my dad called and got mad at me for blowing up on her, saying I didn't have to be that harsh with her. He said it's caused a lot of drama between him and Melissa and Sarah. He said I didn't have to respond to Sarah's goading, and maybe that's true, but I don't think I'm the jerk for saying what he was too scared to, especially when I was being blamed for something that has nothing to do with me. Not the jerk. Your stepsister clearly has some issues that are no one's responsibility but hers. I hope for the sake of her fiancé and future kids that she deals with them. I'm also amused that she called you a gold digger when she was the one who called you up and demanded you give her money. As for your father's troubles, this is something that he should have nipped in the bud a long time ago. I don't know where Sarah's father is or if he's alive, but it was never realistic on her part to expect your father to take his place, and that should have been made clear to her from the beginning. Maybe she should have been in therapy or something. Am I the jerk for shutting off my fiance's computer while he was playing his video games in my son's room at 1:30 in the morning? When we moved back to my family's house about a year ago, my fiance set up his gaming PC station in my elementary school-age son's room since we have such a limited amount of space. He's not my son's biological father.
My fiance and I have a baby and who sleeps in our room, so there's literally no space at all in our bedroom. I agreed to let him have his computer and desk in my son's room as it was the only room out of the two with just enough space. My fiance has always claimed that gaming stops him from going out to bars or spending extra money we don't have. Since moving back, I stressed to him that I don't want him to play late at night because I don't want him to disrupt my son's sleep and affect his circadian rhythm. Over the past year, my fiance hasn't respected my request as he's continued to play video games till pretty late at night, sometimes up to 4 a.m. on weekends. Whenever I bring it up to my fiance, my son always insists that he doesn't mind that my fiance is playing games in his room. My son probably enjoys the company, but he also makes a pillow wall around his face to block the bright lights every night. It bothers me since I know my son could be getting a better night's sleep without a mouse and keyboard clicking away with constant bright flashing lights from the computer monitor. About a month ago, I caught my fiance vaping in my son's room while playing video games while my son was asleep. I lost my marbles at my fiance and told him how he doesn't give a crap about my son's health or sleep. He claimed he doesn't believe in circadian rhythm. I made a very big deal out of this and gave him an ultimatum that he needed to stop gaming late at night and to never vape in my son's room again, or we're done. He promised to stop and has been pretty consistent by stopping at 10 p.m. and not vaping that I'm aware of. Well, last night I heard mumbling from my son's room, which woke me up around 1:30 a.m. and it brought rage to me. I demanded that my fiance get off his game, and he said he was almost done, just 20 more minutes until the match was over. I told him to get out of my son's room or I would be turning off the computer. I ended up pushing the power button to turn it off. Am I the jerk for turning off my fiance's computer during his match? I know my son claims he doesn't care that my fiance plays in his room. As his mom, I want my son to get a good night's rest. Additionally, my fiance never wakes up early to help me out with our kid and sleeps until 10:30 a.m. or later every single weekend. Edit. Fiance saw this post. He is actively packing his stuff and leaving. Not the jerk on that occasion, but you are the jerk for ever allowing him in your son's room to play video games all night and disturb your son. Plus the vaping? What? He's not even his dad. I'd ditch the guy pronto. Your kid deserves better. Not the jerk. Why are you staying with this man? He has to play video games or he'll spend all the money and go out to the bar? Nope. Either he pulls his head out of his rear and behaves like a responsible adult who respects you and your kids, or he finds a new place to live. Those are his options. OP. I don't know why I'm staying anymore. I feel miserable and do 90% of all parenting and of all the cooking and cleaning, etc. Video game addictions are real. He really needs help. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her fiance? Please let us know. What a disrespectful dude. Glad to hear he hit the road. Stop blaming the person I'm training for the rookie mistakes he's been making? Very well. I used to work as a temp in a cardboard factory. I started out assisting the machine operators in their work, but after the person who managed the materials, cutting forms, printing stamps, and ink, who henceforth shall be referred to as Dave, was forced to take a week off. Paid vacation he was forced to take before the end of the year, and the end of the year rush was coming up. And things went south because the floor managers couldn't keep up with his job and their own at the same time. The company decided we needed a second person to do Dave's job to avoid situations like that in the future. They tested several people by having them work together with Dave for a couple of hours, and apparently I was the only one who did a decent job, and so I was told that Dave would be training me. I was never asked if I was interested. I didn't even know they were looking for someone to help Dave until I arrived at work one Monday and my schedule said I would be working with Dave. Of course, I didn't mind, because since I was already capable of helping operate 8 of the 10 machines in the factory, I figured this was a great way to further solidify an actual contract with the company. Now, during his week off, Dave had met a woman and they had started dating. She would constantly text him while he was at work, and it showed in his productivity. Of course, COO figured his drop in productivity was because I was slowing him down. As time went on, Dave's girlfriend moved in with him. Now, I haven't mentioned this yet, but the factory had a 2-shift system, early shift and late shift. Most of us worked in rotating shifts, but Dave had a fixed early shift because he had to be there on Monday mornings. Now, this meant Dave and his girlfriend could never go out on weekends and even had to go to bed quite early. So Dave requested to be put back on rotating shifts once he had finished training me. The COO said he would look into it, but kept giving Dave excuses. so Dave started interviewing for another job. Then came the day me and Dave were called into the COO's office and got yelled at for not pulling our weight and stuff like that. One of the things mentioned was repeated tardiness. Dave couldn't deny that one. He had overslept several times in the last few months, but I had only been tardy once because of a flat tire. So wanting to set the record straight, I tried to interject about my flat tire, and the COO snapped at me to keep my trap shut while he's talking. So after his rant and he dismisses us from his office, I once again bring up the flat tire, and he just snaps at me again that I should have just avoided having a flat tire. That was the last drop for Dave. He got home, wrote his letter of resignation, mailed it to the COO, and accepted one of the job offers he had gotten that week. For the next 3 months, I'm stuck doing all the work on my own. Also during this time, due to a change in the laws in my country, I might become homeless unless I get a contract. So I start asking the COO for a contract, since I've been there 2.5 years as a temp at this point. Just like with Dave, he keeps giving me excuses. After an incident with them refusing any vacation time request I put in that included a Monday, they finally gave me someone to train to be my second. Let's call him Abdul. About a month after I started training Abdul, I get called into the floor manager's office. Apparently, a mistake was made somewhere, and he asks me how it happened. Now that was the first week I was letting Abdul work independently without me constantly telling him what to do. So I tell the floor manager that Abdul had done that job and I had not yet had the chance to inspect his work. The manager grumbles but just dismisses me. A week later, I get called in again for a similar situation. So after I point out that Abdul is learning and mistakes will be made. So this time, the manager blows up at me that I have to stop blaming everything on Abdul, and if I blame one more mistake on Abdul being a rookie, he's getting me fired. This is where the compliance comes in. Around this time, me and Abdul were put in opposing shifts. My first order of business every day would be to double check all of Abdul's work and fix any mistakes. I couldn't inform him of his mistakes, so he kept making them. Abdul also started to get sneaky. You see, part of our tasks had to be done in an area of the factory where only the two of us would frequently go. So Abdul would do all of the work that was to be done where people could see him work, leaving me with all the tasks behind the scenes, meaning I was never anywhere to be found. We also had these big barrels of ink, which were hooked up to a machine that mixed the basic colors of ink into other colors. Abdul had always refused to change these barrels when they were empty. He would usually state he hadn't had time, even though making sure those barrels aren't empty was a priority job. This eventually all culminates into a moment about 8 months after Dave left, where I am once again called into the COO's office. I'm thinking I'm finally getting my contract after 3 years as a temp. I'm also convinced Abdul got a contract the week before, though Abdul and the COO have always denied that. Instead, I'm told I'm fired. The COO also goes out of his way to inform me that he's been wanting to fire me for 6 months now because he blames me for Dave quitting, but was asked not to by the floor managers until I had trained someone to replace me, and they considered Abdul to be ready to do the job now. He also told me that he did appreciate the work I did. He just had a problem with me personally. After my meeting with the COO, I make my round of the factory to inform my coworkers that I've been fired and to say goodbye. The look on Abdul's face was pure panic. He suddenly realized that despite me demonstrating how to change those ink barrels, he had never actually done it himself, and as such, didn't remember how to do it. A week after I left, I got a message from one of my former coworkers that the entire factory was looking to go to the COO's office and demand they rehire me, because Abdul was not only doing a poor job, but he was also being a megalomaniac. I told her not to bother, because if they did rehire me, it would only make the COO hate me even more. Several months after, another former coworker informed me that not even a month after I was fired, Abdul was demoted back to assistant machine operator, and one of the floor managers had to take over his tasks full-time. My Karen sister-in-law stole my skincare products, ends up ruining her skin. So I'm 17, male, and my sister-in-law, who's 29, her family is hosting a family gathering. They're big on family, and they have room to invite literally everyone, which includes me, my parents, my older sister, and me, since we are technically family. Now I'm big on skincare. I had horrible skin when I was 13, and it started as a way to fix it. But even after my skin got better, I just liked it. It keeps my skin looking good, and I find it relaxing. I packed my essentials for the 2 weeks that I would be there. I'll admit it was still quite a lot, but it wasn't insane. Now, the room I was staying in, I was sharing with one of sister-in-law's nieces around my age. The room has an en-suite bathroom. I put my things on a shelf, made sure with the niece that I wasn't taking up too much room. Sister-in-law came in to check on us and saw all of my things. She asked about some things I had since they were expensive brands. She's made it a big point that she and her family have a lot more money than my family over the years. I told her I had saved and I bought them myself. I do have a job. She asked to use them and I said no, because they were expensive and I want them to last as long as possible. She seemed annoyed, but she just left after that. Over the next few days, my sister-in-law was complaining that her skin was dry and itchy. I didn't think anything of it. Halfway through the stay, she came storming down the stairs and threw a small spray bottle at me, asking why I did this to her. I was confused and asked what she meant. Turns out she's been going into the bathroom that I share with her niece and using my skincare, but she's been using what she thought was a spray bottle of water at the end. But she's actually been using a bottle of salt water, which I have because I have 4 pretty fresh ear piercings. At first, I asked her why she's using my stuff. She said it's her family's house, so she can use it, and I told her no, it's my stuff, and I said no. She just reiterated her first point and then asked me why I would trick her like this. I explained that it's salt water for my ears, but she just called me a liar, asking why I would have it on my bathroom shelf next to the rest of my skincare stuff. She then went on about how I purposely ruined her skin. I again tried explaining myself. Sister-in-law then turns to my mother and her mother and said that she had asked about my skincare and I had explained everything, and I said the bottle was water, which was total BS. She only asked about my expensive ones. Her niece backed me up, but sister-in-law called me a liar. Mother-in-law was upset and said I'm horrible and that I'm jealous of my sister-in-law, and my mother said she's disappointed and embarrassed in me. This then caused her and my dad to argue, and now I feel like crap. Sister-in-law's family and my mother are ignoring me or being passive-aggressive, and they even threw out my salt water and won't let me make a new batch and have stopped me when I try to. I don't know what to do. Am I the jerk? Edit. Some people are confused. This isn't my dad's family. This is my brother's wife's family. Also, while salt water is normally okay for your skin, daily exposure isn't. Plus, it might not even be the salt water. Could very well be that she just had a bad reaction to another product. What works for one person might not work for another. I just had a few people asking about that. Not the jerk. What's wrong with this family? Don't use other people's stuff. Don't eat other people's food. I tried a mystery skincare product and now my skin is bad. Lucky for her, it wasn't some sort of other mix. Not the jerk, and take care of your piercings, even if you have to make a fresh batch every night. That's some serious business. You don't want an infection. It's infuriating that her selfish tantrum is interfering directly with your health care. Today I messed up by canceling my roommate's favorite TV show. This didn't happen today, but many years ago when I was in college. My roommate was obsessed with one particular TV show, which I was also a fan of, but he was very into it. He joined different forums and groups about it. He participated in chat rooms about it. He was obsessed. At the time, it was up in the air as to whether or not the show would be canceled. So, being an immature 19-year-old, I decided to have a little fun with it. I had recently found out about this service that would distribute anyone's article for free. Knowing that my roommate had alerts set up for everything to do with this show, I was fairly certain that if anyone was going to see what I was about to do, it would be him. I wrote up an article announcing the cancellation of the show. I started it off by making it sound very official and professional, and then deliberately threw some bizarre statements into the article, things that would never appear in any official announcement. I looked it over, sent it in, and promptly forgot about it. The next morning I got up, jumped in the shower, and started getting ready for class. I heard my roommate shout, "Oh no!" I walked back into the room and asked, "What's going on?" My roommate looked devastated. "They canceled it. They actually canceled it. They're idiots." I asked him why they had done that. He proceeded to read the rest of the article out loud. As he reached the bizarre statements, he got a confused look on his face, held his hand towards the screen and said, "What is this crap?" I burst out laughing, and my roommate realized he had been had. He shook his head. "You're a jerk. Seriously, dude? How did you even get that out there?" We had a good laugh about it. He vowed to get me back, and I went off to class. Later that day, I walked into our dorm, and my roommate had a huge grin on his face. "Congratulations, dude. You're famous," he said happily. "What did you do?" I asked. "Oh, I didn't do anything," he replied.
This is all you're doing."
He sent me a link and told me to open it up. The link opened up to a post on one of the fan forums of the show. The subject was the show's cancellation, and the post was a direct copy of my fake article. People were reacting with devastation and pure outrage at the network's decision to cancel the show. They had overlooked the bizarre statements and had taken the fake article as an official cancellation of the show. I couldn't believe that it had gone this far. I read page after page of devastated fans mourning the demise of their favorite show. After then, the mood shifted. The creator of the show posted on the forum after he was contacted by several fans. The post was along the lines of, "Well, I hope we're not canceled because I'm at the office and working. Now I'm fielding phone calls from my writers asking if they still have jobs." "Oh crap," I said. My roommate burst out laughing.
"Oh, that's right, dude. Keep reading."
As I continued to read, the tide of the comments turned from angry at the network to angry at whatever jerk decided to pull this stunt. These people were out for blood. They talked about tracking me down and getting me. This was when I learned that my roommate was far from the most devoted fan. At least he found it funny. They wrote to both the network and the show creator, encouraging them to serve paperwork on the service I used to release the article in order to find out my IP, which would have traced me to the college and likely resulted in disciplinary, if not legal action against me. I spent the next 2 months thinking I was going to get expelled or arrested. Meanwhile, my roommate just laughed at me every time I got anxious and told me it served me right. The following month, the fake article was referenced by TV Guide and is still being mentioned on both IMDb and Wikipedia pages for the show. As for me, well, I haven't spoken about this in many years, and I'm still choosing to use a throwaway because my regular account has a bit too much of me on it. Am I the jerk for telling my boyfriend that I don't want his daughters in my apartment? I'm in a dilemma here because I know that most people will think I'm callous, but I don't think I am. Give me your honest opinion. I, female 38, met my boyfriend, male 36, at a party 4 years ago, and we hit it off immediately. I told him very early on that I'm child-free because I know that many would not be okay with this, and I don't want to lead anybody on. After a month, he told me that he had 2 kids, who are 11 and 12 now. I freaked out because I didn't know what to do. I liked him very much, but I didn't want to be a parental figure. He said I didn't have to. He has shared custody with his ex, and me and him would meet on the weeks that he doesn't have custody. Now, he basically lives at my place the weeks his daughters are with their mother. We said we loved each other very early on, and we decided this arrangement worked for us, and to break up the moment it didn't work anymore. I could see myself with him forever. I love him to bits. I love our life together. I love missing him when he's with his family. He proposed to me a month ago, and I didn't know what he meant, but he said that we didn't need to get married, he just wanted me to have a ring. I thought it was romantic. Anyway, a week later, he took his girls to my place for a weekend. His ex was sick, and he didn't want the girls to get sick too. I asked him if he maybe wanted to be with his daughters instead, but he said that he would miss me since it's our week. I said okay. I've met his girls on many occasions, and they're lovely, so I had no problems more than I felt a bit awkward. Last week I got home, and he had dropped his girls off at my apartment. They were in my closet trying on my heels and clothes. I was freaking out, so I called him. He said, "Yeah, change of plans." He and his ex switched, so the girls are staying with us. When he got home, I told him I couldn't do this. If he was having problems with our arrangement, then I understand, but I still don't want kids at my place. He called me the jerk because his girls have done nothing and are polite, etc. He loved me and we're engaged. Did I expect us to have 2 separate lives when we've been together for 4 years and love each other? I'm tired of these guys thinking I don't really mean it when I say I don't want to have kids. I love him and I do want to be with him, and I see our future when his girls are old and left the home, and we could live together and even get married. But I don't think I'm being the jerk. Yes, maybe our way is not traditional, but my love for him is no less for it. Update. I've talked to my boyfriend, fiance, and we are ending things. He's as devastated as I am, but I can't hurt him anymore. I always thought you break up when the love is gone, but now I know that's not how life works. I've been naive. He's asking for a break or to keep in touch, etc. I don't think this will work. If we're going to get over each other, I think we need to break clean. I don't know how I'll manage. God give me strength. Thank you. If anything happens to their mom, they're moving in with you permanently. Yeah, and no such thing as, I don't want to parent your kid. That's unrealistic. Kids aren't going anywhere. If it's a choice for you, OP, or kids, He will choose his kids. So I guess it's decision time for you then, OP. It's him and kids, or you move on. You're not a jerk for not wanting to parent. It's what you want and you made it clear. But maybe the love messed up reality. But a decision will have to be made, eyes wide open. Am I the jerk for telling my son's pregnant girlfriend to get a job once she has the baby or move out? My son, Steven, who's 19, has been getting into trouble with the police for numerous small-time offenses like stealing and fighting, which resulted in him getting sent to juvie for a few months. When he came out, he had to check in with probation regularly. At the probation office, he met a girl, Lizzie, who's 21, and they hit it off. She'd just come out after a year inside. Her family are very well off, but they kicked her out, so she was living in a hostel. She was only there temporarily and had nowhere to go after that, so with my permission, Steven offered her to come and stay with us. When Lizzie first moved in, it was tough for her. She's used to quite a comfortable lifestyle and was hoping to return to one when she came out, but she settled in quickly. I gave Steven one more chance after he came home, and fair to him, he's managed to get a job laboring on a building site. Lizzie, however, has refused to get a job. Before she got arrested, she was studying for a degree and sees jobs like cleaning or admin work as beneath her. She's trying to find an entry-level job in the field she was studying, but has had no success. This is a bit of a problem, as even with me and Steven working, we only just make enough to cover the rent, food, and bills. More than once, we've had to go days without hot water. Lizzie became pregnant a few months back and decided to keep the baby, which Steven is fully supporting. I'm happy for them, but this will give us another mouth to feed. I said that as soon as the baby is born, if both mother and baby are healthy of course, I expect Lizzie to take a job, any job available. I work as a cleaner in the evenings and nights, so I'm around in the daytime to take care of the baby while Steven and Lizzie work. I told them that if Lizzie refuses, they can look for a place of their own. This made Lizzie cry and say she doesn't want to do a soul-destroying job because she used to have a bright future ahead of her. I understand this and it's unfortunate, but I've worked crappy jobs all my life, and this building site job is the first one Steven has ever had. Living where we do, crappy jobs are a part of life, and we won't be able to provide her baby with a comfortable home if she doesn't get one. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. But why are you happy for them having a baby? Seriously, they're financially insecure. They both have records. Their job prospects right now are completely dim, and you're happy for them? Doesn't anyone under 25 on Am I the Jerk know how to not have kids? But on the question of whether Lizzie needs to contribute, you are not the jerk. Her best bet is to show up pregnant at her wealthy parents and beg for support. Seriously, this is her best option, which is why being happy for them is completely mental. I'm guessing I'm happy for them means, well, she's already pregnant and he already agreed to support it. So if I say I'm not happy for them, it will just upset the apple cart. So I'll agree that every baby is a blessing. Not the jerk. But to be honest, it might be best for her and the baby and for you if she did both, got a job and moved out. You're the jerk. You're a parent, and part of that job is being there for your kids no matter what. Once they have a family of their own, you're then a grandma. Stop running from your responsibilities and just be a decent human being. If you refuse to, don't be surprised when your son and his family go no contact with you. If they go no contact with her? That sounds like a good thing to me. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her, I can't really say daughter-in-law, son's baby mama? Never enable lazy entitled people. They'll take advantage of you as long as you let them. Am I the jerk for lying to my partner about having kids and laughing about it? So I recently became engaged to my 34 female partner who's 35 male. We met on a dating app 3 years ago and we hit it off from the start. 5 years ago, I got my fallopian tubes removed. I've known that I didn't want to give birth since I was 15 years old, and I've never changed my mind. I always said that if a kid came into my life, I'd love it, but I'm not actively seeking that out. On my dating profile, it explicitly states child-free and infertile, verbatim. At the beginning of our relationship, my now fiancé regularly referenced other things I put in my profile, so I had assumed that he had read that part and kids never really came up in other convos. Well, last night he mentioned that I should consider stopping my birth control since now that we're engaged, and given our ages, we should start trying to have kids. I honestly thought he was joking and I laughed. He got frustrated and asked me why I thought it was funny, and I reminded him that the second line of my dating profile said I was infertile. He was shocked and called me a liar. I happened to remember that I sent a screenshot of my dating profile to a friend for review around that time, and I pulled up the old convo with her to show him the time and date, and that indeed it stated I was child-free. I told him I had my tubes taken out, so there was no chance of me getting pregnant without outside help. IVF is technically still an option, but I don't want to put my body through that. He stormed out, and his mom called me crying that I've ruined his life. His sister sent me a long message about how getting my tubes removed should be illegal, and how I'm a monster for stringing my fiancé along. To be honest, his family never really liked me because they think I'm beneath him. A cousin told me it's because of what I look like, and I'm a career woman in a male-dominated field. Plus, we share the household labor 50-50, and I make more money than he does. Because of this, I don't take what they say too seriously, but I'm starting to feel bad. His family believes I stole years of his life and ruined future chances of being a father by lying about my fertility status. He asked for space when he stormed out, so I haven't reached out to him. I do love him, but I'm starting to have serious second thoughts given his family's reaction. I realize now that we should have talked about this before, but am I the jerk for how I handled the situation? Update. So my fiancé came home this morning and I asked him if he wanted to talk. He said there was nothing left to talk about. I asked if he wanted the ring back and he just got angry. I've never seen him like this, and I tried to speak calmly to him, but he was just yelling about how I was giving up and wouldn't even talk to him. I reminded him that I'd asked if he wanted to talk and he said no, to which he responded that he didn't think I'd go all crazy over a disagreement. This was a huge wake-up call for me. I asked him why he had never brought up kids beforehand, and he said because he knew I would get all weird about it. I tried to get him to clarify, but he just kept saying he couldn't talk to me when I was like this. I swear I never raised my voice and tried to speak calmly the entire time. I told him I can't have kids, nor do I want any. I don't want to give birth. That seems like a deal breaker for him and his family. He said his family had nothing to do with this, and I asked why he told them then. He said because he was hoping they'd talk some sense into me. I told him I was ending the relationship and staying with my dad for the time being. This didn't go over well. I'm still kind of shaking. As I was leaving, I asked him how long he's wanted kids, and he admitted he never thought about it, but he knew I didn't want any. But now that we were engaged, it wasn't just about me, he had a say in it. I told him I physically could not get pregnant without IVF, and I asked him how he expected that to work. He responded that I didn't know what I was talking about. I left after that because I just didn't have the energy to try and convince him, and I didn't want to further agitate him. When I told my dad everything, he was furious. Apparently, when my fiancé spoke to him about proposing, he didn't ask permission. Both my dad and I are opposed to that tradition, just basically letting my dad know his plans. My dad asked him if he was okay never having kids, as I'd had my tubes removed. My dad says he specifically brought it up my surgery. My fiancé told my dad that it would always be my decision. I'm thankful this happened before we started any of the wedding planning, but it feels like I swallowed a boulder. I know I need to be more adamant in the future about my stance on having kids, and I promise I will have these discussions with future partners openly and from the start. I blocked his family from messaging me after they added me to a group message and started throwing Bible verses at me and saying that I'm defective for not wanting to have kids. I don't have the energy right now to be petty, so I just blocked them. My dad is going to help me move my stuff in the next couple of days. I'll talk to my landlord and figure out my lease. Thanks for all the feedback. It was helpful to understand where I went wrong. My dad got a tattoo in the style of our matching tattoo with his new family, and now I want to get mine removed. My father, 41 male, and my mother, 40 female, divorced 3 years ago. I live with my mother. My father remarried a year ago. His wife has 2 kids who are 18 and 15. Me, 18 female, and my dad got a matching tattoo 2 years ago. It was a simple outline tattoo of a photo of us. After my dad got married, things started to get a bit more distant between us because he started to spend more time with his new family. Besides that, I think he doesn't want to see me around them. I don't know why. After all, I've never treated any of them bad. Yesterday, he refused to meet me on a weekend when we were supposed to spend time together, saying he was unavailable, and he reposted a story of him hanging out with his new family. While looking at the photo, I saw that he got a new tattoo on his arm. It was an outline tattoo of a photo of him with his new family, just like the tattoo he got with me. Now, I know that millions of people have these tattoos, and it's not my original design. Still, I'm disappointed that he got a tattoo with his new family in the same style as ours, because I always thought the tattoo was special between us. Now I'm thinking of getting it covered or removed. I called my dad in the evening and asked him why he was hanging out with his family instead of meeting me.
He said they planned it earlier, which doesn't make sense because it was agreed in court after the divorce that I could spend time with my dad every weekend. So, we planned it earlier was a pretty BS excuse. He also knows that I'm totally okay with spending time with his family. When I told him that, he said, "It's not that simple." I guess I'm too dumb to understand complicated things because he doesn't even try to explain it. Then I asked him why he got his new tattoo in the same style as ours. He said he didn't think it would be a problem for me. I told him, "You broke something special between us. How can you not realize that? I think I'm going to get my tattoo covered. You can do the same." As a result, he thinks I'm overreacting and I shouldn't be so selfish. My mom says that what my dad did wasn't such a bad thing. She thinks we should sit down and talk. I'm not sure. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Getting a tattoo in the same style could have been a cool idea if he had talked to you first. That he didn't, then appeared to avoid you to hide it, shows that he knows it was crappy. Even if that wasn't the case, you can cover up your tattoo whenever you want to, including a previous one. But that also means you don't get to ask him to cover up his. You can hate it and tell him that, but you can't demand that he change it. Bachelorette ruined my friendship. I'm the maid of honor and organized a weekend getaway for the bride and her bridesmaids and a few friends of hers, 10 people total. None of the girls, including myself, are friends with each other outside of the bride. I had a really hard time organizing this event because in the group chat, no one would reply, and I was left high and dry for a lot of the decision making. Eventually, the same 2 girls would chime in and would offer to help. About a month ago, we made a group chat, just the 3 of us, to figure out last-minute details of the trip, since we're the only 3 really involved in the planning. The bride, from the beginning, has said she didn't want to be involved in the planning at all. Keep this in mind. Anyways, the weekend rolls around, and the bride ends up ignoring me most of the weekend. She only spends time with her other friends. I've yet to get any appreciation or thank you from her about the planning. Also, keep in mind, everyone spent around $1,500 for the Airbnb, activities, etc., while the bride paid for nothing. The last day comes and things are tense. I've hung out mostly with the other 2 girls from the group chat because they're really the only ones I've become closer with. During the bachelorette weekend, we used the group chat once to organize a surprise we had set up for the bride. We had set up decorations and a picture-taking area, a full table spread of cheeses and meats, a custom-made cake, and bride-personalized drinks, all for which she completely ignored when she saw it. The last night there, the other girls got invited to some retired hockey player's house, and the cab ride is $100 one way to get there. Considering the cost, and that it was really not my vibe, I said I'd stay back, and the other 2 girls I was with most of the time also decided to stay back. The next day when we were packing up to leave, it was really uncomfortable. No one would look at us or talk to us. I was the only one with a truck, and the other girls shoved all of their stuff in my car so that there was no room for anyone to drive with me back home, which was an 8-hour drive. We get back home, we meet at the bride's house and unload my truck. As I'm pulling out of the driveway, the bride runs up to my car and says, "I want to see your phone and messages with the group chat with the other girls." I say no, that's really uncomfortable and is invading their privacy. She said fine and walks off and says nothing to me as I leave. From what I've collected and can infer, it probably seemed like myself and the other 2 girls were cliquey. However, I personally talked with everyone else a lot, but was getting ignored by the bride. I'm at such a loss. We're adults, and I'm being asked to share my text with a group of girls that I was asked to interact with outside of the bride in order to organize her bachelorette. And now she's worried we have become friends without her? This is something I've been told explicitly. I want to pull out of the wedding for how poorly I've been treated. She's been such a horrible friend, and her asking to go through my messages has been such a breaking point for me. Edit. For those asking, she wanted to see the chat because she said that she is insecure about me talking with the other girls about her, so she wants to see what's in our group chat. I absolutely had nothing to hide. There's nothing in that group chat. But I said no and told her she can ask the other 2 girls and then can see it because it's their messages too. It was more of a matter of principle. I don't think you get ownership of your friends and should be allowed to see all their messages because you're insecure about them being friends. As well, she hadn't spoken to me the whole weekend and I was feeling very ignored. She had many opportunities to ask to go on a walk with me and talk about this, but instead she waited until I was backing out of her driveway in front of all the other bridesmaids, except the other 2 from the group chat who had already left. Also, keep in mind, it was after about an 8-hour drive and I was tired and wanted to get home. So either way, I wasn't going to sit there and have a conversation. And lastly, the whole reason we had this group chat was to plan the bachelorette because none of her friends ever replied and stuff needed to get done. And the bride has explicitly said over and over that she wanted no involvement in the planning. Update. The wedding was yesterday. I didn't go and haven't spoken to the bride since I told her I was dropping out of the wedding 2 months ago. Another bridesmaid also dropped out. The third girl mentioned in the original post did go, but said she regrets not dropping out. The bride got mad at her for several other miscellaneous things in a few days prior to the wedding. I found out from the other bridesmaid that dropped out that the bride had been talking about me behind my back for the year leading up to the bachelorette and had plans to completely ghost me and cut me off after the wedding. Keep in mind, she made me her maid of honor. Big lesson learned is to listen to your gut and do what's best for you. My Karen sister refuses to help around the house, so I kicked her out. I'm female, and my sister Gina, who's 23, was left homeless after my parents cut off all financial support at the end of college. They warned her, and she didn't believe them. She was living at a friend's house until she found a job, but she decided that she would go after a master's degree that doesn't start until February. I live in the city that the master's degree is in. She asked me if I could help her for a few months until she started her master's degree. She couldn't help financially with the house or anything, but she said she would help as soon as possible. I don't have such a stable condition to support another person besides my son, who's 6, but I proposed that I would pay the bills alone as long as 1. She took care of my son from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m., not on Sunday, and Saturday from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m., and 2. She cleaned the house every 3 days. Nothing too deep, just a sweep and dishwashing every day. That would save me money on babysitting and the cleaning lady who comes to my home twice a week. She didn't seem very satisfied, but that was my condition. I wouldn't support her totally like her friends do because I don't have the financial resources, and I'm only doing it because it's cheaper than hiring other people. My son likes to stay on his own, doing his own things that he likes. He just needs someone to keep an eye out for him and to make him lunch. After 2 weeks of her living here, me paying all of the bills and food, even the car which she uses a few times a week, she sat down and talked to me. Said that she accepted because of my condition, but that she was child-free for a reason, and that was precisely not having to take care of kids or to deal with them constantly. We argued about it, but I asked her to continue caring for him at least this week to give me time to hire someone else. That was on Wednesday. She agreed, and when it was Thursday, she called me saying she couldn't do it and for me to try to find someone else. I was irritated, and even more so when I saw a pile of yesterday's dirty dishes when I arrived. I told her that my condition to support her until December was for her to take care of my nephew and clean the house. She refuses to do either now, so I'm no longer interested in her staying at my home and me having more expenses, so it was better for her to move. She started saying that she would eventually pay for everything when possible and that I was using her by asking her to work without being paid properly. We argued, but I made my decision and I gave her 15 days to move. She's calling me the jerk. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. I think your arrangement was fair to both sides. If she can't hold up her part, then you're not under any obligation to hold up yours. Not the jerk. I wouldn't have even given her 15 days, OP. That was nice of you. She wants to use you, but doesn't want to help in any way. Your conditions were fair, but that wasn't good enough for her, so she needs to go. Not the jerk. Is there a reason she can't work and earn money? People in graduate school, heck, even undergrad, usually work. You told her your reasonable conditions and she agreed. If she's backing out now, it's reasonable for you to give her notice to find her own place and a job. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or their sister? Please let us know. Her sister sounds almost as useless as you are, Reddit boy. Am I the jerk for not letting my husband pull $14,000 out of my account without signing a contract? I, female 36, have been married to my husband, who's 42, for 2 years. I've never been married before him, but he was married twice and has 6 kids. He requested our finances to be split. Fine by me, because seeing how he blows through his money is so frustrating. He says he has kids, commitments, and has to provide, but I don't think that kids would need that much money to live like the other kids. His bank account is almost always empty, whilst mine has over $20,000 in it. We take turns paying for daily expenses and stuff. Lately, he's been struggling with money. He borrowed from a number of people, including my own brother, about $4,000 from him just a week ago. He just seemed desperate for money.
I asked what the deal was, and he said that he needed the money for the kids, which seemed fishy since kids don't really need that much money for their expenses. The eldest is 16. He came and asked to borrow $14,000 from me, pull it from my account and into his. I tried asking him what he needed the money for, but he said it was none of my business, then insisted that he'll return it ASAP. I said okay, but under the condition that he sign a contract stating he'll return the money in full. He acted all shocked and offended, then went on about how I don't trust him and his word. I told him that's all I got and this was my one and only condition. He kept ranting about how I'm refusing to help and making the situation more difficult for him instead of cooperating. I insisted on a contract to be signed before he even pulls a penny, and this morning when I told him this one more time, he blew up and said that we're family and that I should be ashamed for involving courts and lawyers between family. He left the house and was so upset he hasn't responded to any of my calls yet. Am I the jerk for standing my ground with this condition? Update. So we talked after he got home, and when I tried pressing him to tell me what he needs the money for, he gave me the same attitude and said, I don't have to worry about it. I still stood by the condition I made, and he called me useless, then stormed off to spend the night with or at God knows who. Not the jerk. Is he a gambler? He insisted that he'll return it ASAP. Sounds like he's counting on that big win. OP is not the jerk for sure. I hope she had a prenup. Husband needs help. My Karen daughter is demanding that I pay for her mother's college tuition. We divorced 20 years ago. I, male 58, and my daughter, who's 27, are in a huge argument over money. A little background first. My ex-wife and I divorced before our daughter was even 1 year old. Custody fights were brutal until she was 9. Her mom lived in an apartment on the rough side of town, and when she was with me, she had an upper middle class life. She had ponies and private coaches for sports that she liked. Her mom liked to make me out as the bad guy to her. Yes, I probably tried to make sure that she knew I was not what her mother told her. When it came time for college, she had a full scholarship to major institutions, including one where I went as an undergrad and another where I went postgrad. Her mother told her that she should never pick a school that I went to. In the end, she picked a college where she only got a 20% scholarship. I told her that that was her choice and she would need to work to cover the cost. I also gave her $500 a month allowance. After graduation and through grad school, I continued doing that. After she moved on and was working, the only time I saw her was when she needed money for something. After never returning calls or texts that I sent, she shows up at my house. During her stay, I asked when she thought her student loan payments would be due and how much they would be. She then said that they would be around $200. I, in hindsight, was foolish in offering to pay them for her. She then said that her mother was also just finishing college and asked if I would pay her loans as well. I explained that we had been divorced for over 20 years now, and what her mother does is not my responsibility. My daughter blew up and said that I was being unfair because I had done much better than her mom and I needed to help her. She then said she never wanted to see me again. Am I the jerk for saying, fine, then don't show up looking for money for car repairs or anything, and that she needs to get her phone off my cell plan? Update. The only time I sent my daughter money was while she was in college. After college, it was her showing up only when she needed money for something. After getting her master's, she was unable to find a job that she felt she could succeed in near her mother or myself, and is currently working a 6 to 7 hour drive away from both of us. One of the other questions seemed to say I only tried to buy her love. I was the pretty involved dad, attending all of her school events, coaching sports teams, and officer in the PTSA. She will always be welcome to come home, but she can't just show up and treat me like an ATM. Several comments were how could I allow my former wife to live in what I called a bad part of town. My former wife has been married and divorced 2 times after our relationship broke. Her mother's life choices were hers, and she was responsible for them. During the years that I paid child support, the amount I was paying her was more than she was paying for rent. Having a pony or private coaches does not make us middle class. The wife and I were lower middle class at best growing up. Our parents were hardworking and they loved us. Because of that, we wanted to provide both our daughters that fairy tale childhood. We made sacrifices so both of our daughters had that life. Before anyone says it, my wife had a daughter before we met that is 6 months younger than my daughter. No, to me, she is not my stepdaughter. She's my daughter. I'm the only father she has ever known, and I love both my daughters with all my heart. Not the jerk.
Your daughter made poor decisions. Ex-wife is not your problem. Daughter is 27 and no longer your responsibility. You helped her through undergrad and grad school. Poor choices like declining full scholarships are what lead to being in a better or worse financial state. Now she wants you to bear the consequences of her poor choices and support your long-gone ex? You can let her walk away guilt-free. I would recommend some sort of middle path where you can both cool off and maintain a relationship, but not at the expense of being emotionally and financially manipulated. Not the jerk, but I fathom why a parent would encourage their kid to turn down a full-ride scholarship and have their kid starting out saddled with debt. We live in America, and education, like healthcare, is ridiculously expensive, especially when there was an alternative. Your daughter uses you for money and doesn't respect you. She respects her mom, and that's the only parent she listens to. She feels as if you owe both of them. It's up to you to figure out if that's the price you want to continue to pay to have her in your life. You're the jerk. Why do rich people always hoard their money instead of helping others with it? At the end of the day, this is the woman who had your daughter for you. Helping pay your daughter's student loans is literally the bare minimum, and you don't deserve any sort of award for it. Helping your ex would be the right thing to do, but I don't expect you to do it. Rich, greedy men like you are exactly why I'm perfectly fine living on my SSI income instead of wasting my days away at some job that I'd hate. People like you don't deserve any of the money you have, and if I can get a piece of it thanks to systems that have been set in place by our government, you bet your butt I'm going to take advantage of it. Sorry, not sorry. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his daughter? Please let us know. I think that last commenter was the biggest jerk of them all. That's gotta be one of the most Reddit things I've heard in a while. Am I the jerk for telling my wife that I hate her new job? My wife, 37 female, and I, 38 male, have been married for 12 years and we have 3 kids who are 10, 8, and 6. During lockdown, my wife's job allowed her to switch to 100% work from home. They never required her to go back to the office because her productivity actually increased, so there was no need. It made things easier for us too. I dropped the kids off at school and daycare in the morning, and she picked them up in the afternoon. She was able to keep up with a few things around the house during the day. We saved on gas and car maintenance, etc. A few months ago, she was contacted by a recruiter about a job. It would be a nice step up in her career path as well as a boost in pay, but there were drawbacks. The company had no work-from-home policy and would require her to work in the office. This was apparently non-negotiable. It would also be a 45-minute commute for her. We talked it over a lot, and I expressed my concerns about how this would impact our daily lives. I told her that I don't necessarily think that the bump in pay is worth the major changes to our daily lives. Not to mention the stress that a long commute can have on people, and that could impact their mood and how they interact at home. She assured me that everything would be fine and that we would adjust as a family, and soon the new routine would just become our new normal. I told her that I would never tell her to not take the job, but I just don't know if it's worth the changes that it's going to bring. Ultimately, the decision was hers, and she accepted the new job. She's been there for about 10 weeks now. To say it's been an adjustment is an understatement. She wakes up and leaves before the kids even get up. She'll help get a few things ready for them before she goes, but the entire morning kids routine is now on me. I also do both drop-off and pick-up for all of the kids too. Evenings have been a huge mess because I get home and try to get the kids distracted while I start dinner. When my wife gets home, she's usually stressed from the drive. Her commute has turned into over an hour due to construction and traffic and takes 15 minutes for herself to calm down before eating alone. Then after dinner, she's going to bed earlier because she has to wake up earlier. I told her that I feel her new job has put an unfair amount of household and childcare duties on me and that she's being far less present in our lives when she's home. She's told me that we just need to give it more time to adjust and things will get easier. I told her that 10 weeks is a pretty good adjustment period and I hate it so far. She told me I'm being an unsupportive jerk and that I need to give it more time. Edit. I don't have the emotional bandwidth right now to deal with the huge amount of comments that I'm getting here. Those kinds of responses are why men don't open up when they feel exactly like I do right now and just bottle things up. I have to get ready to pick up my kids. They're getting Happy Meals tonight because forget it. Everyone sucks here. You two are talking past each other. You say you wanted to come up with solutions, but you don't suggest any actual solutions. She was dismissive of your concerns and also didn't suggest any solutions. She's making more money. Use that to outsource some of this stuff. As a general matter, I don't think it's fair to expect that over the course of a lifetime, your spouse's career will never require you to pick up the slack at home.
These things tend to shift. She handled more stuff while she was work from home, now it's your turn. If it's unsustainable for you, then absolutely talk about solutions. But I hate it is not a solution. OP. I did offer solutions, but the character limit prevented me from including every single aspect of this. Some of my solutions were doing meal prep on weekends so dinner time is easier, or possibly ordering meal kits. Those were things we agreed on. But others, like me telling her she needs to find a way to be more present in our daily lives because me and the kids feel like we never see her, were met with more hostility from her. I get your point, but that's not a solution, just a complaint. Maybe something like have a fixed time for her to recover when she comes home and a fixed time to spend with family would be a better suggestion. Make some new family traditions. Maybe even something silly, like a loving phrase you say to each other that signifies her having fully arrived at home. I'm sure she doesn't want you and the kids to feel neglected, so if her reaction is negative, it's about the delivery. This is your chance to find creative solutions. Who knows? Maybe you have a mandatory, to a degree, cuddle time every day, and maybe your kids will remember that fondly forever. I understand you're frustrated with the situation, but this can either be a tough time in your family relationships, or it can be the start of something new, with the potential for being an awesome thing. It's up to the both of you what it ends up being. You came up with good solutions, but this is all on your wife at the moment. OP told her that he and the kids feel like she's not present in their lives anymore, and that's the truth. But they were met with even more hostility. She's not listening, and she's the one that needs to change. Not the jerk. I don't understand the people saying it's your time to do it when you've pointed out the fact that before her new job, you both used to split the kids' routine together, and I don't see what the issue is with keeping up with housework since she worked from home. It seems like you had a good dynamic going on and balanced teamwork. Because that's not what he described. His words make it sound like he's just sad that she's not doing as much at home anymore, not that they had an equal balance before. You're the jerk. Why is it too much to expect men to support their partner's advancement and career when women do it all the time? Suck it up, soldier. These are your kids too. Genuinely curious if you'd say the same if this were a wife with the exact same complaint about her husband's new job. You're the jerk. She was doing all that and more while she was working from home. Time for you to step up and be an equal parent and not stifle your partner's nice step up in her career path as well as a boost in pay. What a hypocrite. Guy I went to school with refused to say that he knew me, then he got upset when he wanted something from me. My wife and I had a New Year's resolution to do more hands-on volunteer work this year. So me, being an IT guy, I found a group that refurbishes computers for students. I thought it was a slam dunk, sounded like an easy thing to do, and it was aligned with what I do for a living. On my first day and orientation, I ran into a guy that I went to school with around 10 years ago. I spent 3 years in school with this guy, and I immediately recognized him. The guy is on my LinkedIn as well, so I know him. We did projects together. There are pictures of us at graduation. I 100% know the guy. I went over to say hi, and he was sort of evasive about saying anything to me. I was initially confused because I thought we were on good terms. When I said, "Hey man, it's me from school," he said he knew who I was, but apparently once graduation was done, he decided to move on from school and be done with it. He told me he wanted to deal with adults and wanted nothing to do with people he went to school with. This was despite the fact that we were now in our 30s, so we weren't exactly students anymore. So that kind of hurt, but whatever. I respected his decision and I left him alone. There were a dozen other people there, so I went about with orientation and everything. I didn't see the guy again for the rest of the day. A couple hours later, when we were all done, I had met a few people who were actually sociable, and we decided to go across the street to a pub. I was in a good mood, and I told them the first round was on me because I had a good day. So we go over to the pub, and that guy shows up and sits down at the table. I ask, "What are you doing here? I'm not buying you a drink. You don't know me." The guy called me a jerk and a bunch of other names and then walked away. I explained the situation to the group I was with, and they were all like, "What?" I got an email from the event coordinator yesterday. Apparently the guy complained about me, said I'm not a team player. Luckily, the coordinator heard my side of the story and was fine with it, so I'm good. But I have to continue dealing with this guy if I continue going to volunteer. So, what on earth? I like the organization, and I'd want to continue with it. A few people have mentioned to me that I should have just bought the guy a drink, but out of principle, I won't buy a drink for someone who disrespects me. Am I the jerk for telling the guy to leave the table at the pub? Edit. This was a college friend, not a high school friend. More info. I messaged another guy I went to school with who also knows the guy. He told me that they used to hang out a lot until around 4 years ago, when out of the blue, the guy just stopped talking to him. He sent him a crazy long text message basically saying the same thing that he said to me. I moved on, and I don't want to associate with old classmates. Not the jerk. Guy's really gonna tell you he doesn't want anything to do with you and still expect you to buy him a drink? The man you used to be friendly with at school flat out told you he wanted to move on and have nothing to do with his old classmates from so long ago. Now, by the time you and the other volunteers went to the pub across the road, old classmate may have reconsidered. Or maybe he thought he could get a free drink, or he wanted to sit with the other volunteers and you were just there too. Or who knows what he was thinking, to sit at the table. But you made it clear you weren't going to buy him a drink and he didn't like that. Sucks for him, not the jerk. Fake vegetarian on a flight. I'm a cabin crew, flight attendant. I've been working this job for over 10 years now. Any issues that crop up during my workday, I will bend over backwards to accommodate people if I can. However, there are unfortunately a handful of people that are dishonest to try and get what they want. Fake injuries to try to get upgraded, fake birthdays, you name it, people have tried it. And believe me, I've had loads of scenarios where people try to cheat the system because it makes them feel special or that they have one-upped me, I guess. Let me tell you about a fake vegetarian I had on board. He was flying an economy, coach, and the second from last row. He wanted the pasta option. I apologized and told him due to popular demand, we had run out in the middle of the cabin, but we did have the chicken option instead if he wanted that. Without skipping a beat, he said, I'm a vegetarian. Last time they brought me a meal from the business class, so I'll just wait for that. Now, this is something I would have offered anyway as a nicety, if available, as I'm not too much of a jerk and I genuinely like helping people out if I can. After all, it's a 747, not a 7-Eleven, as the saying goes. Anyway, the way he just expected it right off the bat, before I could even offer a solution, left a slightly bad taste in my mouth. And also, I smelled a rat. I was 99% sure that I had cleared away an empty wrapper of smoky bacon crisps from him earlier on. And no, they weren't a veggie brand, as I have the same ones occasionally. I was certain that he was being picky and wanted a higher quality meal. Plus, any regular flyer would know how often we run out of the veggie options and to pre-order a veggie meal. I said, it's unfortunate that you didn't pre-order a vegetarian meal. I will see what I can do for you though. Just give me 5 minutes to finish up here. I went up to business class. They had also run out of the veggie option, so I went up to first class and asked if they could spare anything. We ended up putting a few leaves together with a bit of dressing. They spend thousands more up there and can dine at any time they want to, so they didn't want me taking any of the hot veggie options in case someone wanted it later. Fair enough. Then I thought, I could probably have some fun with this fake vegetarian. Cue malicious compliance. I brought it back down on a silver tray and held it above his eye line so he couldn't see what it was. I explained that unfortunately, the vegetarian business class option had run out. Then he went to cut me off so he could complain, but I held up my hand and said, however, I managed to go one step further and I got the last vegetarian meal from first class. Then I pulled a linen cloth off the top of the tray as I placed the salad down right in front of him. It was a very basic but large salad, and his face said it all. His face went from a smug, haha, I worked the system, to, what is this, within 3 seconds flat. He then said, I wanted something hot. I'll just have the chicken then. I put on a shocked face and said, I can't give you that, sir. I would feel awful. He responded with, don't worry about it. It's fine. I gave him an, are you sure you're vegetarian? Look, and I brought back the chicken, by which point it had sat drying up in the oven a little bit longer. Bon appetit. Just to say, even if he was a real vegetarian, he should have pre-ordered. Same goes for gluten-free, vegan, kids meals, diabetic, etc. Anyways, that's my story. I don't know who I married. I know the title might sound dramatic, and I know my family is my responsibility, but some tips or advice would be appreciated. Before someone says I shouldn't have kids if I'm poor, it's too late to not have them. I posted last week about how my wife did the bi-weekly grocery store run and had $35 to get what was needed, and she spent $7 of it on Evian waters. Before she left, I offered to make her a jug of ice water because it's hot, and I knew that she was going to get thirsty. Her jug is a $50 Stanley cup. Even though it was bought months ago, it was out of our budget, but she begged for it and swore she would use it all the time. We don't get food stamps because I make too much. I work full-time and pick up as much overtime as I can while my wife stays at home with our kids.
I do everything I can to stay afloat. She tells me they were on sale and she just wanted it. That is not a sale. I immediately got frustrated because we don't have money for needs, let alone wants. She's embarrassed by going to the food pantries, so I try to do it on my lunch breaks or on my one day off. We have a tight budget. I walk to work to save gas. I pick up overtime when it's available, and I'm at the point where there aren't enough hours in the day for just me to make enough money to get us to break even. I told her she needed to find some part-time work. She's been a stay-at-home mom because daycare is expensive, but now all but one of our kids are in school. Today, she told me she would need a new interview outfit and to get her hair cut. I said we don't have money for that. Our fridge completely died a few days ago. She then started talking about all of the things she would be doing or buying for herself once she starts working. I told her the money would be going towards getting caught up on bills, getting the kids what they need, and to maybe start saving a few bucks. She said it would be her money, which caught me off guard because my paycheck isn't considered mine, nor have I ever insinuated that it is. Our kids only got one pair of new school shoes this year and no clothes. It bothered me more than it did them. My oldest has a field trip next week that she won't be able to go to because we don't have the $50. My wife chose bougie water over a few gifts from the Dollar Tree for our kids. When I asked why she doesn't care that our kids are going without, her response is, "It's only one birthday they're missing. Field trips aren't that big of a deal. At least they have something to wear to school." Very nonchalant, it is what it is attitude. She had a rough childhood where she never got celebrated, got gifts, never had new school clothes, etc., so it's not a big deal to her. I've never seen this side of her, and I don't like it. We've never been so poor, so is this just her survival mode method? Please contact your daughter's school. They often have funds to help out for kids who need extra to go on field trips. I never would have thought until I needed it for my son. Doesn't sound like a partnership, two people working together towards a common goal. Pretty painful when one partner does the complete opposite. Your wife sounds incredibly self-centered, and in a lot of ways, like she never matured past the kid who didn't get anything, so now she wants it all for herself. You're right to be concerned about her selfish attitude. Your wife is embarrassed by going to the food pantry, but not embarrassed she spent $7 out of the $35 for groceries on fancy water? I don't comment often and tell people to separate from their spouses, but this might be something to potentially think about if she's really more concerned about nice water over her kids getting new clothes for school, or just experiencing being a kid in general. We were poor growing up, but my mom always made sure we had clothes and were able to attend birthday parties and field trips. She's being very self-centered. Am I the jerk for kicking my husband's friend and his daughter out of my home, knowing they have nowhere to go? I, 32 female, and my husband, 32 male, live with our sons, who are 12 and 14, and our 3 cats. My husband has ASD, which makes it hard for him to maintain a job. This hasn't been a problem for me, as I make a decent wage and can afford a modest but decent life for our family of 4. In 2020, my husband worked at a fast food restaurant for a couple months and met a homeless man who he quickly became friends with. We'll call him Rob. He's 42. One cold night, Rob and his then girlfriend asked to stay with us for a while. We had a guest room, and though uncomfortable, I agreed. After a week, their nightly arguments between each other and general household hygiene were too much to bear, so I kicked them out. When they left, the guest room was trashed, and there were pills everywhere. As a mother, this really disturbed me, and I've never stopped being wary of Rob. Fast forward to July 1st, 2023. Our guest room has turned into a storage room, and it would take work to get it livable again. Rob has broken up with his girlfriend and has gotten custody of his daughter, who's 15, from a different woman, and her 8-month-old puppy. Rob was sick of living with his parents and burned bridges with them. My husband came to me panicked one evening, asking me to go pick them up because they have nowhere else to go. For context, only I drive. Reluctantly, I again agreed to host Rob, mostly because I can't stand his daughter. We'll call her Anne, being on the street. With the guest room out of commission, they take my elder son's room. Both my sons have bunk beds, so I figure it will be manageable temporarily. Initially, Rob promises to be out in a week. I knew it was a lie, as he had no money and no plans, but I wasn't concerned that it would take longer. My sons are in online school, so he promises to be out by the time school starts, 8:14, so my son can use his room for school. Another lie. Living with these two has been awful. They don't pay rent or do chores. Rob only works about 3 days a week. Anne eats all our expensive snack food and refuses to eat meals that I cook. She ate 12 ice cream cones in 3 days, my son's whole month of treats.
Rob has ruined our yard with cigarette butts and trash everywhere. Their dog has dug in multiple places and they're not training him not to. My son's room is trashed by them and they've broken dishes. They don't clean the sink after using it and they don't flush the toilet. Living with them is driving me crazy. Anne is spoiled, but she is very sweet and she is a kid. I don't like Rob, but he says that he's gotten sober. At this point, I'm the only one who cleans, cooks, and pays bills, and I can't do it for 2 extra people. I told my husband I want them gone before my son turns 15 in October. He said I'm being unreasonable. They have nowhere to go. I told him a shelter may have resources for them, and I can't handle this anymore. It's not my fault they're in this situation, and I can't live like this. And I don't think my sons deserve this either. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your home is your sanctuary and your safe, happy place. Having Rob and his daughter there is disturbing your life, not to mention that they're not respecting your home. Your husband needs to be more understanding. Yes, they don't have any place to go, but they're not your responsibility. They were initially supposed to be out by 8:14. They've already overstayed their welcome. You shouldn't have to give up your comfort and peace of mind to accommodate Rob. I'd kick them out ASAP before they can claim squatter rights. Not the jerk. Your husband is so out of line here. You owe these people nothing. You've already gone far above and beyond, taking in homeless strangers along with their problems, their kids, their bad hygiene, their fighting, and then eating you out of house and home. They don't help. You're supporting a bunch of freeloaders. What else are you supposed to do? You pay the bills, take care of the kids, your husband works part-time, and you're having essentially no say in your own home. Girl, stop asking your husband and get these beans out of your home. Change the locks and be done with it. Again, you owe them nothing, and you're putting your own kids at risk. How your husband doesn't see this is absolutely mind-boggling. Get them out yesterday, not the jerk. So many of these Reddit stories really make me appreciate the simplicity of my life. Am I the jerk for refusing to forgive my ex so his mistress can have him? My husband and I had some marital issues after the birth of our second baby. There was no lack of love or affection, at least that's what he told me. We still loved each other and we're basically in a rough place. My husband met his now girlfriend at work, and I guess he developed some sort of feelings for her and her for him. He came to me one day and said that he loved me so much, but that he wanted a break for a few months because we needed to work out our issues separately. I was heartbroken, but I agreed, thinking we were going to work out our marriage. Not a week later, I heard that he was hooking up with her. I filed for divorce and haven't seen him since. This was all 3 years ago. Our divorce was finalized 2 years ago. He has tried throughout the years to get in contact with me, but I refuse to even open his emails because I miss him and I know what he would be saying. Empty sorries and apologies. For me, he cheated, even if not everyone agrees because we were on a break. His girlfriend contacted me now asking me to forgive him because according to her, he's refusing to make their relationship official. According to her, they love each other, but he's refusing to propose or start a family with her because he feels guilty about what he did to me. He tells her that they didn't deserve happiness and she thinks it's all my fault. I just wrote, "Please don't contact me again," and I blocked her on Facebook. She used alternative accounts and wrote that I'm bitter and vindictive. Am I the jerk for refusing to do this? Help my ex's mistress play family with him? How is that even on me? Not the jerk. I'm proud of you for divorcing. Too many people will put up with this for too long. And sorry, but my opinion is, when you're married and on a break, you're still married, so his cheating was not okay. You thought you were going to reconcile. There was no conversation about seeing other people. You don't owe him or his girlfriend anything, and the fault is his. He cheated while you were thinking you were working on your marriage. Just ignore these fools. My Karen neighbor reported me to the HOA for having a wood-burning fireplace. I, 25 male, own a lakeside property that was legally and officially given to me by my parents. I've been living here for 6 years, and I have some great neighbors along with some not-so-great ones. Out of all my neighbors, I've only ever had problems with one who lives right next door, named Mariette. She first moved in early this summer as she had the former house on her property demolished and rebuilt. My problem started with her over the use of my wood stove and fireplaces. With the temperatures getting colder, I've started to use them daily. My house is not equipped with any form of heating outside of the wood stove and a fireplace. This means that from fall until spring, I will constantly have them going to keep my place warm. My family never outfitted the home with anything better because it was for weekend trips, and we would winterize and leave it when things got cold. My parents thought of adding oil heating when I moved in. However, I was opposed to it because it was a waste of money and I didn't mind splitting logs. 5 days ago, after having received my shipment of logs for the fall, I was approached by my neighbor Mariette. She came around asking for my parents, to which I said that they don't live here and that I am the homeowner. She didn't believe me and said that I was too young to be a homeowner before leaving. Later that day, I heard a knock at my door and thought it was my girlfriend, so I gave my usual greeting of, "Hey, sweet cheeks," while opening the door. Unfortunately, it was not her, and it was Mariette again, so I apologized quickly and asked what she wanted. Once again, she wanted to speak with my parents, to which, in a more stern tone, I said that I was the homeowner. This time, she finally got it and said that I'm violating HOA policy by using wood-burning fireplaces indoors and outdoors. In response, I said that as new as the house looks, I'm not a member of the group and that the town permits fireplaces and burning yard waste. She then went on to ask why I even needed them because they do nothing but harm the environment. I went on to explain that while the house exterior looks new, the house actually has been around since 1930 and still uses a wood stove and fireplace heating. She didn't believe me yet again and said she would be back with an inspector. Yesterday, once again she came with another person who introduced themselves as the HOA inspector. They tried to talk about my fireplaces, but I shut them down immediately and said that I'm not a member of their group. The guy then tried to lie by saying that the HOA is in control of all the properties in the area. I immediately called him out on the lie and said that he's either lazy or a moron for not knowing that I am not with them. We went back and forth one more time before I told them I will not listen to them and to stuff it and leave. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. If this continues, inform the HOA that if they continue to harass you, you have no issues looking into legal counsel. Also, let your neighbor know that she's not allowed on your property, and if she comes over, she's trespassing. I would tell the HOA the same as the neighbor. They're not to step foot on your property or you will involve the police. In my state, I think it's best to send that in writing by certified mail and keep the proof they received it so there isn't any question when you call the police. Not the jerk. Sounds like she's going to be a real pain. As much as I hate to say it, it's time to lawyer up, or you're going to be harassed by her and the HOA. Have you ever lived somewhere with an HOA? If so, what did you think of them? Please let us know. I prefer living somewhere with no HOA, but I also prefer living somewhere with no neighbors. People kind of suck. Am I the jerk for reporting my daughter's car missing after her stepbrother took it without permission? I got my daughter, who's 17, a new car 2 months ago. Her stepbrother, who's 19, has gone crazy about it ever since and has been attempting to drive it, but my daughter made it clear she doesn't want him to. He'd refer to it as our car and would get mad when my daughter decorates it with pink and adds teddy bears and necklaces as decoration. He'd get angry and say that she was ruining their car and embarrassing him in front of his friends, although she never let him get inside of it. I asked my husband to talk to his son, but he said that my daughter and I need to chill. Fast forward to this past Friday. My daughter called me at work saying her stepbrother took her car while she was upstairs after he demanded the keys and she refused. I called his phone, but he didn't respond. I called my husband and I told him what happened. I told him that he needed to go bring the car back or I'd have to call the police. He called his son, then called me back, saying his son was just taking it to go to the movies with his friends and will bring it back at 9 p.m. I couldn't wait. I warned him one more time to bring it back, but he stalled. I called the police and reported it stolen. My stepson was picked up from his location and brought into the local police station. We got the car back, but it was a mess. The decorations and toys in it were gone. My daughter didn't stop crying about it. My husband blew up at me on the phone for calling the police on his son and causing him to spend the night there. They both came home the next day and a huge argument ensued with my husband saying I made a mistake reporting the car missing and said that I escalated this situation and that I was the one who created it and I should have gotten his son a similar car or at least told my daughter to share hers. Otherwise, we wouldn't be dealing with his son's temper tantrums. The house has been full of tension since then and everyone is just mad at each other. I didn't want police involvement, but seeing my daughter cry, I just couldn't take it. This is weird. For the simple act of reporting the car stolen when it was in fact stolen, not the jerk. For marrying and subjecting yourself, and more importantly your daughter, to the environment created by your husband and stepson, you're the jerk. Get a divorce and get them as far away from your daughter as possible. Not the jerk. You told your husband to get the car back or you'd call the police. He and his son ignored you. You called the police. No one should be surprised. Why doesn't your husband buy his son a car? It sounds like your finances are separated. Does the kid work, go to school, do anything responsible with his life? Man, he's 19. He's a legal adult and he stole from his minor step-sibling. Man needs to man up and figure out this tantrum crap isn't going to blow over so easily. And now he's on the hook for legal consequences because he is, in fact, a legal adult. I can't imagine being 19 and so jealous of a high school junior I stole their car and threw their teddy bears away. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for calling the cops on him or not? Please let us know. Dude sounds like he's got more issues than Nintendo Power. My Karen sister volunteers me to babysit my neighbor's kids. I, 22 female, have a sister who's 26 who's going away this weekend with her husband who's 40 for a little getaway, which will be their first time since having their son, who's 1. So my sister came over to visit today and she brought my nephew. She was gonna be here for about 2 hours or so, and my sister saw my next door neighbors. My sister spoke to my neighbor and said that she and her husband are going away for the weekend, so my nephew is gonna be staying here with me for the weekend, and it's his first time without his parents. My neighbor, who has 3 kids and a husband herself, mentioned she's also going away this weekend as she's going to see a friend and she's looking for a babysitter also. My sister actually told my neighbor that her kids could come stay next door with me since I'm already babysitting my nephew. Here's the thing, my neighbor's husband will be home and he has the weekend off and they're his kids. When I found out my sister said the neighbor's kids were coming over, I said they were not. I only agreed to babysit my nephew. My sister thinks I'm being harsh and selfish, and she thinks because I'm child-free, that's why I'm being so rude about not wanting to babysit my next-door neighbor's kids. However, if next door asked me, it would still be a no, because the dad will be home and he can watch them. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. The nerve of your sister. I would have told her to go tell the neighbor the answer is no immediately, or I would hand her kid back to her and not ever offer to babysit again. Not the jerk. It sounds like their dad will be home, he needs to parent his own kids. She volunteered you without consulting you. There's a huge difference between just a 1-year-old and 4 kids total. And if your sister is that pressed for someone to watch your neighbor's kids, she can do it for them when she gets back in town. My parents are kicking me, 18 male, out. My stepdad claims I've done nothing with my life and I have no direction. My parents divorced at an early age. My stepdad was strict, but he was a good father. I'm the oldest. Due to lockdown, I didn't go to college this year. I skipped it, and rightfully so, as I have health issues. I'm taking classes online. I don't work and haven't for at least 2 weeks. I left my job at GameStop after they stopped giving me hours and they weren't promoting me. My stepdad came in while I was finishing up some coursework. He told me I had 2 weeks to get out or he was forcing me out. I asked him why, and he says I have no direction, no goal. I'm doing nothing with my life. I'm 18. You can't seriously expect me to figure my life out. But he disagrees and claims, yes, I should have a good idea what I want. He says that a parent's job is done after I turn 18. All I do is play video games. I don't have girls over, no friends. We're in a lockdown. I only go out to work. Buzz off. I'm wasting away inside when I should be doing more. I told him I was looking for a better full-time job that had a good career path and I was taking online classes. I even offered to pay rent. He said no. From his point of view, I'm wasting away and he won't allow me to become a loser. Adversity brings innovation and strength and life will be hard, but he knows that I will look back and thank him one day. I don't know what else to do. I feel like he thinks I'm worthless. I spent a lot of time inside last year for good reasons. We're in a lockdown. I don't want anything to happen to me. Am I being unreasonable? My dad says yes. Yes, I am. I just don't know what to do. This isn't really just him. My mom mostly goes along with what he says, but I don't know. How can I convince her to convince him to let me stay? Or is my dad justified? Am I a loser for not having any plans past 18? Your parents have zero obligation to support you. What, so I'm just supposed to dump them and hope for the best at 18? I won't take care of you when you're old by that logic. You failed to consider them and just presumed that you could stay there indefinitely without even asking them. Then you didn't go to college. Then you quit your job. Speaking as a parent, that's what set your dad off. OP, you didn't read. I went to online classes. I guess this lockdown doesn't even exist to you. Does it? I forget. You morons always act as if it isn't real. Your reasons for avoiding college and quitting your job don't sound particularly strong. OP, you're a moron. Go figure. A lockdown isn't enough. I'd rather not get sick and possibly not make it. I've already had a friend pass. Don't know why that's not a good enough reason. Without another job to replace it, you just sound entitled. OP, you don't read, do you? I left because I was going nowhere and getting no hours. I'll give you no job lined up, but buzz off. I made a mistake. I didn't realize it was my first job. Not everyone is perfect like you. I wanted something more hours, not 8 to 12 hours a week. That's nonsense. I was only making barely anything. It was my first job. You're a super jerk. You're probably making yourself look a little better in this interaction, and fair enough. By your own description, this is in character for your stepdad, and he's likely trying to help you and motivate you. If I had to guess, he's probably tried to give you advice and direction, but is maybe thinking you just want the free ride. Don't give up hope. If they've been good to you this far, work with them to find your path. Life can be so much easier not doing it alone with your family's support and resources of time, money, and experience. Put aside your video games and see if they want to spend more time together where you can discuss these things naturally and let them feel like they're a part of your life and you value their opinions. Just some thoughts to see if anything rings true. OP, I got advice. Work harder and never settle for less. I was tired of so little hours at GameStop. I begged, I busted my tail, and got no reward. No thanks. Nothing but more cut hours. So, he says all you do is play video games. How close is this to the truth? You eventually need to become a productive member of society who is financially self-sufficient. Your parents should reinforce that. You should be working or else training for a job or getting educated, or both. You just quit a job with no better job to move into. Bad idea. Are you spending 40 hours a week looking for another one? If not, start doing this now. 60 hours a week if you're in danger of being kicked out. Generally, the rule is, don't quit a job until you have a better one. It's okay if you don't know what you want to train for at 18. In that case, work minimum wage jobs until you figure it out. Then take classes to get that job. If you can afford it, go to college. A satisfying high-wage job with great promotions is not going to fall into your lap. See if you can get a job and stay at home. Trying to live independently is no joke. Living in a shelter will get everything you have stolen, even your shoes. Don't go there. OP, it is true. In my defense, it's miserable. I'm not used to being indoors, but this lockdown has made everything so bad. My area is just horrible. I'm so afraid to really risk my life. I risked my life working at GameStop, and now I had my shot, so I'm not as afraid. But yeah, I have underlying health issues, and I'm afraid of getting sick. I guess that makes me a failure. I realize I should risk my life to make money. Update. I lied. Okay, I'm sorry, Reddit. I admit I lied. I know the reason and always have. It's the same reason my parents divorced. My anger issues. It's the reason why I quit my job. I got angry and stormed out without really being a mature adult about it. My parents see the writing on the wall, and they see that it's only getting worse. I confronted my mom, and after a shouting match, she came up to my room and tearfully told me, "This is why we want you gone. You can't control your anger and it scares us." I fly off the handle at the slightest provocation. When I play games, I get super game rage, and I destroy things. I do have a habit of breaking things. Stepdad told me they'll let me stay if I get help and prove that I can control my anger. He thinks maybe if I have direction or goals, I can manage my anger. But I have to prove that I can. Until I do, I have to get out. They're afraid of me. They're afraid of my anger, and they don't know what else to do. They've tried talking to me before. They can't afford therapy. They just hope that it would go away. But it hasn't, and frankly, it's getting much worse. I don't disagree. I exploded in rage on someone last thread. I got so mad that I broke my keyboard in rage. Over what? A comment I didn't like. Don't even ask what I did when they initially told me I was being kicked out. But yeah, I have anger issues, and I don't know how to control them. I'm sorry for the deception. I just didn't want to admit that I have anger problems. I still see myself as innocent. I know deep down I messed up, but my emotions say otherwise. Emotional self-control is one of the hardest things to teach someone, especially if it's not taught when they're young. I know someone with anger issues. Luckily, his parents had the means to get him into therapy when he was a preteen, and that helped him get a handle on things. I can only imagine how difficult it is for both OP and his parents. I know what it feels like when it seems your emotions are controlling you and not the other way around, as I assume most of us have at one point or another. I hope he's able to get a handle on things, but I know it's not that easy and not likely something he'll be able to do on his own. Well, that's it. No good boy points for you. No tindies for you. With intense gamer rage like this, no wonder they're kicking you out. Something tells me you spend a lot of time on Discord and drinking high fructose-laden carbonated beverages. Am I the jerk for going to my sister's dream school when she just got rejected? So I got into Cornell last week. Honestly, I thought it was a fluke. I'm not smart at all. I got a 28 ACT, a decent GPA, because my school grade inflates considerably. I had some decent extracurriculars, but nothing remotely competitive enough to get me into a school like Cornell. But anyways, my twin sister is the opposite of me. She's a genius. She has way more impressive stats, 34 ACT, and she only took it once, compared to my 3 times. She has way better grades, way cooler extracurriculars. Everyone always looked up to her as the smart one. I didn't and still don't mind, it's true. The only reason I can fathom I got in and she didn't is that she applied to the engineering college while I applied to arts and sciences. I don't know if too many of you guys are familiar with Cornell, but they have a bunch of different colleges you can apply to, each with their different admission criteria. Well, last week, decisions for Ivies came out. Unfortunately for my sister, she didn't get into a single one, including her first choice, Cornell. She checked as soon as it was available and called me bawling. I consoled her and told her everything was going to be okay, that who cares what school you go to, that she was brilliant and was going to be successful no matter where she goes. Well, anyways, I pretty much resolved that I was getting rejected, so I didn't even bother to look at my email until later that night. Well, I guess surprises do happen sometimes, because I'm a Cornellian. I got in. I just don't know how, but I did. I really want to go, but this would devastate my sister. All week she's been crying and solemn and sad. She's been angry at her friends who got into top schools, especially the ones with lower stats. She's decided to go to NYU, but she just hasn't been herself. I haven't told our parents. I think they assumed I didn't get in because she didn't. Am I being selfish? Should I just go with her to NYU? We always thought we were going to go to school together, but it's Cornell. I couldn't in a million years imagine that I'd get in. I've been researching obsessively about it, and I can't shake the desire that if I don't go, I'll regret it. Ithaca looks beautiful. It's a small town, which I would love to get away with from the huge city that is New York. It seems like a dream opportunity. Am I being a bad sister? I know she would be upset. We were supposed to go to school together. It would crush her. I really don't have anyone else to talk to. Am I the jerk for going to her dream school, especially considering how much harder she's worked compared to me? Update. So everyone told me that I should go, so I decided to tell my sister. Well, she started screaming from excitement and got, not actually, mad that how couldn't I tell her earlier, and she's so proud of me. But seconds later, her excitement just turned to sadness. She went from super giddy to depressed in seconds, and she started bawling, uncontrollably bawling. I tried to comfort her, but she pushed me away and locked herself in our room. I'm going to give her some alone time right now, and we can talk more about it later. Update 2. So my sister sent me a text, and it said, "I'm sorry for how I reacted. Please don't be mad. I'm so happy for you and your accomplishments. It's just that after I got rejected, I at least had the consolation that I get to go to school with you and we can be together. But now you're going to where I wanted to be, and I'm just so sad. I worked so hard and did everything I could to go to the best school I can, and I just feel like all my hard work was just wasted effort. I'm sorry I'm ranting. I just need more time." I'm not going to lie. When I read this, I cried. A lot of you are saying that I obviously must have attributes that made me desirable, but I really don't. I don't deserve my acceptance. I did my homework between classes, barely studied for anything, took the easiest AP classes available, etc. Meanwhile, I see my sister always taking the hardest classes, studying as hard as she can, always volunteering. She deserves it, not me, and seeing her so hurt pains me. I'm really strongly just considering going to NYU with her. Everyone at Cornell will be just like her, and I don't stand a chance. And I know if I go to Cornell, we're going to drift apart, which would suck because we're best friends and I just don't want to lose my sister. Update 3. So I told my parents, and they did not react how I would have expected them to. First, they tried to insist that Cornell made a mistake between our applications. Then they went on to explain how I should go to NYU with my sister. I thought it was strange because they definitely would have supported my sister going to Cornell if I didn't get in. My sister apparently thought so too, because she asked why would I not go to Cornell, and they said how unfair it was that I basically slacked off in high school and was able to go when my sister was the hard-working one who busted her tail at school. I don't know if I'm being dramatic, but that hurt. I knew they always thought my sister was the smarter one. They've made it clear multiple times. But to hear them say that I don't deserve my spot really sucked, even though they're probably right. I stood there in silence, but my sister stood up for me. She asked them how could they say something so cruel to their daughter, that I 100% have every right to be there, and that they should apologize for being so rude. My parents were shocked because we're both very passive people, and neither of us ever talked to them like that before. This started an argument, and long story short, we're currently in our rooms. I'm just so thankful to have her stand up for me. I realize that I have internalized a lot of the comments they've made over the years. I'm glad I have my sister who actually believes in me. I still don't know if I want to go to NYU or Cornell, mostly because I just don't want to go to school without her. She's my best friend, and going 4 years without someone who just thinks so positively about you just seems so long. At the end of the day, I always thought the NYU was going to be the school I was going to, so I wouldn't lose much by choosing it over Cornell. I'm going to talk about it more with my sister and look into both schools more. Update. So later that day, my parents actually came to me and apologized for everything. I know everyone in the last post really hated them, but my parents are actually good people. They have flaws, but we all do. They knew I was smart and even encouraged me to apply to schools like Cornell. They just automatically assumed my sister would get in, especially versus me, which if you look at our scores, I can't say they should be blamed. Nevertheless, they realized that they were being jerks, and they apologized for making me feel like I'm not as capable as my sister. That they were shocked, but it was no excuse for what they said or how they made me feel, and they loved me and apologized for what they said. And for the moment you've all been waiting for, I decided that I want to go to Cornell. It was such a tough choice and wasn't made without serious consideration, but ultimately I'll be happier in Ithaca. Plus, my sister is going to try to transfer after our freshman year, if she still wants to go. She may find that she loves NYU after all that time. Whatever she decides, I have no doubt she will be extremely successful. Plus, it'll be good to spend some time apart from each other and grow as people. NYC is only a short bus ride away, so we can definitely see each other during holidays and breaks. I want to thank everyone for their overwhelmingly positive support. Am I the jerk for insisting on living with my dad to attend a better school? I'm 15, male, living with my mom since she and my dad divorced. My dad just got married to a woman with 2 sons who are 13 and 8, and they all moved into her house. Where I'm currently living with my mom isn't great, especially compared to where my dad lives now. Even the schools there are much better. My school doesn't send students to top universities, while this other school sends students to them, so it's a huge difference. I talked to my mom about it, and she thought it might be a good idea for me to live with my dad for the sake of the better school, so I brought up the idea to my dad. He told me he needed to think about it and would get back to me. After a few days, he told me it wasn't possible. Naturally, I asked him why, and he explained that their house only has 3 bedrooms, theirs and 1 for each of his sons. He said this is a new phase in their lives, and they need time to adjust to living together. He also mentioned that my stepbrothers and I haven't spent much time together, so there's a chance of conflicts arising. He thinks I should get to know my stepbrothers better before making a big change that could disrupt the family dynamics. I didn't agree with his answer though. I told him I'd be totally fine sharing a room with my 13-year-old stepbrother, and we've never had any issues when we've hung out. I also pointed out that saying no to this opportunity could seriously affect my college plans, given that the school in that area is much better. I explained that I spend a lot of time at school studying or in extracurricular activities, so I'll not impact a lot in family dynamics. I'm very obedient and I'll do all chores that they need done at the house. I'll spend the weekends at my mom's house. But he stuck to his decision. I really want to move in, so I reached out to my grandparents and uncles to talk to my dad. They had a chat with him and he called me afterward pretty angry. He said I should have accepted his first answer and now the whole family is against him, thinking he's not acting correctly. I want to live with my dad, but I can't seem to get him to be cool with it. I get that their house doesn't have enough rooms for each kid, but I'm willing to share. I understand it's a different dynamic for those used to having a room to themselves, but it's new for me too. I admit I don't know my stepbrothers that well, but up to now, I've never had any relationship issues with anyone in my life. I've always been respectful and helped with chores, and that wouldn't change now. I don't understand where the fear that I could cause harm to them is coming from. I genuinely see this opportunity as very important, but I'm at a loss for how to convince my dad to let me live with them. I'm in need of ideas. I know you're only a teen, but you need to grow up a bit here. You're being very selfish. Why would you want to be somewhere you're clearly not wanted? It's your stepmom's house. It's not like your dad bought the house with her. OP. First, I'll be there every weekend because it's also my dad's house. Actually, if I attend school there, I'll spend Monday through Thursday there, and I'll be with my mom on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So it's just one day of difference. Second, there's a significant distinction if I go to school in my dad's district or my mom's district. I want to get into a good college. College can make a huge difference in life. Update. Well, I guess any chance of me studying near my stepmom's house is over. A few days ago, I messaged my dad asking what time he'd pick me up on Friday to spend the weekend at their place. He didn't respond, so I asked again, and he said he wouldn't be picking me up, that I wouldn't be spending the weekend there. I asked why, and he said it's not his weekend, it's the next one. I was really upset by this because he never used the weekend is his or not excuse. Before he got married, we spent practically every weekend together. To me, this showed that he truly chose his new family over me. He knew I was already upset about the school situation, and he did this to show me that I'm not welcome there. I told him that it's okay for him to choose his new family, but he didn't need to pick me up anymore, that he could just forget I exist and I'd do the same. I logged into Instagram, which I don't use, to block him, and I saw a picture of him at an amusement park with my stepbrothers, and he had written, "Me and my boys." He didn't even invite me to go with them. I have no idea when that was. He truly excluded me from his life. I got even more furious and sent him a message telling him to enjoy having 2 sons now instead of just 1, and that I wanted him to go buzz off. My dad called me multiple times. I answered once, and he started scolding me, saying I'm acting like a kid, and I hung up on him and didn't pick up again. He sent several messages saying he wants to talk to me. I was really naive in this whole situation. He replaced me months ago. I couldn't bike to school because of the knee surgeries I had, and I just realized now that he never once took me to school. It was always my grandparents or my mom. Lately, I've seen him very little, and I thought it was because of the surgeries and recovery. But apparently, he only had space for every other weekend, whereas before his new family, he was always available for me. My mom is upset with me too. She says I lost my reason, that I have to talk to my dad, that I'm not behaving appropriately. As far as I'm concerned, I'll never talk to my dad again. Now I'm gonna spend the night staying in my room because if I step out, my mom's gonna try to force me to talk to him. I don't know if I'm doing right or wrong, but right now I'm just really angry and sad. I never thought my dad could replace me like this. I thought he truly cared about me. Edit. People are saying that my mom is taking my dad's side. Nope. She doesn't want me to be in a fight with my dad. She's saying that we need to talk, listen to each other. I guess no mom wants her kid to be in a fight with her dad. But I don't want to talk to my dad though. Update. He sent a lot of messages last night. He's saying that we need to talk in person, that I'm misunderstanding everything. He came over early this morning, but I told my mom I didn't want to talk to him and I locked myself in my room. He wants to come tonight and talk. Update 2. I talked to my dad, but I told him I'd only talk if my mom were there too. The 3 of us sat down at the table. My mom said I should be the first to speak, but when I started talking, she said it wasn't what I should say and that I should apologize first. So I apologized to my dad for the language I used. Then right after, my mom said I'm grounded for 2 weeks for my language, stating that nothing justifies what I said to him. It's my first time being grounded in my life. Then it was my dad's turn to talk. He said I'm being immature and unfair. He explained that he has other people in his life who are important now, so he can't give me the same attention as before. I tried to talk, and my mom told me to listen quietly and that I'd have my chance to speak later. He mentioned that I act like everything has to be according to my will and circled back to the school situation. He told my mom that I talked to my grandparents and uncles, and my mom got upset about that, adding another week to my grounding. And when I tried to complain, she said she was disappointed in me for not understanding that I should respect my parents' decisions. So I figured it would be better not to argue further, as it would extend my grounding. So I'm grounded for 3 weeks now, both for my language I used with my dad and not respecting his decision. Finally, he said he's always done everything to be present in my life and give me the best that he can. He said he feels unjustly treated after years of dedication, and I treat him like he's done nothing for me. I have to agree that he was very present and dedicated until recently, but I can't feel that anymore. When I started talking, my mom said if my tone got aggressive, the conversation would end, as it's meant to be a friendly discussion, not a fight. I tried to stay as calm as possible so that the conversation wouldn't end before I could express what I was thinking. I said I understood that there are more people I need to share my dad's attention with now. However, these people are always with him since they live together, and the little time I'd have with him would only be on weekends. I mentioned that for the first time, he brought up the legal aspect that I'm only entitled to be with him every other weekend. I said this showed that he deliberately chose to decrease the time we spend together. I also said that having new people around doesn't mean he can forget about my feelings or me. I told him that the photo he posted at the amusement park with the caption, "Me and my boys," hurt me deeply. My mom hadn't seen the photo, so I showed it to her, and she was upset with my dad too. I said I understood the difficulty of me moving to my stepmom's house, but I felt extremely unjustly treated by the arguments presented. It was as if my stepbrother's difficulty sharing a room with me was just as important as a good educational opportunity for me. I said he should be concerned about my future, but it seems like the only opinions that matter are those of his new kids. He said I was misinterpreting things, but that he'd be more careful about posting pictures and captions that could hurt me. About the weekend issue, he said we're all still adjusting, and indeed, he'd like me to be able to come over every weekend like it used to be. But now he needs more predictability since more people are involved. I mentioned again that he was putting others' desires ahead of mine and that my wishes were never a priority compared to theirs. This showed me that he had preferences. He fell silent for a moment and then said he'd fix the situation. I'll always be welcome to visit and stay where he lives. He also said he wouldn't bring up the every other weekend visitation arrangement again. He said the school issue is more complicated, but that he's still looking into a solution. He again said I need to understand that circumstances change and I'm still his priority, but now there are more people involved. He mentioned he knows it's not easy for a 15-year-old, but I'm smart enough to know that he's speaking the truth. He invited me to spend the weekend with him, but I declined, saying I don't feel welcome at the moment. He said he loves me and that if I ever doubt that at any point, I can call him. So that's where we are. We're at a bit of an impasse. He's been sending me several messages every day to show that he's there for me. I feel like I'm being a bit unfair to him. On the other hand, I feel like his new family doesn't want me around. Imagine already only seeing your kid, who you love supposedly, during the weekends, and then telling them that you don't even want to see them then. The dad trying to play the victim here is quite funny to read. Who needs a biological kid when OP's dad can look like a hero for fathering stepkids? I feel bad for OP. Neither of his parents seem to be looking out for him. This dad is dropping his kid for the new shiny ones, and I have no doubt his wife is egging this on. The "you can come over anytime" will be short-lived. So much of what his dad said is such blatant BS, and I'm surprised mom didn't call him out on it. Sadly, I think OP is going to find himself abandoned in the next 6 months to a year. Goodness, I hope I'm wrong though. This poor kid is really getting the short end of the stick here. He sounds quite a bit smarter and more reasonable than any of the adults in this scenario. If dad married new stepmom without the kids ever spending enough time around each other to develop a relationship, he moved too fast. Stepmom fully bringing him into her family while excluding his son is inexcusable. Sidelining OP's education because integrating the family would be a challenge is inexcusable. Some people treat kids like inconvenient pets. This makes me so sad. His dad is obviously replacing him and just got caught in the act, and his mom seems way more worried about respect and not her son's feelings. I really hope OP has someone else in his corner. It's like everyone posting is the idiot. It's not the dad's call. It's not his house. Stepmom decides. This kid sounds like a sociopath, along with naive about family dynamics. His father has moved into a new house with his new wife and 2 sons recently, and the kid is like, I need to live with you for school. Not wanting to be a part of the family dynamic at all. In fact, it sounds like he just wants to game the system and doesn't even consider any other issues or complications. If his parents cannot get his therapy because of money, how in the name of Thor will they be able to pay for a T20 college? There is so much missing from this, I cannot begin to trust the narrator. P.S. After reading some of the top comments, I expect to be pulverized in the votes, but I stand by my take on it. I'm sorry, but she married a man with a kid, and they don't even have a room for him to sleep in just for when he visits on weekends. The readjustment process should have started the second they knew they were getting married to have space for OP. If that's where his father lives, then he has a right to have a space for himself there. And if they weren't willing to find a way to accommodate his presence, then they never should have gotten married, because regardless of his desire to live there full time, they would already be jerks for not having his own space set up for him just for when he visits. Do you realize the father could actually disown his son? Does this make him a crappy father? Yes. Would this make OP's situation better? No. OP is acting like a spoiled brat. He could have handled it better and actually gotten things his way. Am I the jerk for hiding my savings from my fiancé? I recently got engaged to my fiancé after 2 years of dating and told her we should probably start looking at houses. She told me that we didn't have the money for a deposit on a mortgage, but I personally have a lot of money in savings. It's a little bit more than $160,000. My girlfriend was initially just shocked because it's a lot of money for a 24-year-old to have saved. I've been extremely lucky in life. After a couple of days, she began to be annoyed at me. She felt like I was hiding this from her. I told her that I didn't hide it from her. I was just raised to not talk about personal finances with anyone other than someone you're married to, and I figured engaged is close enough that I'm happy to talk about it. I also said that I had actually used these savings to help her before. I've paid her rent a few times when she couldn't, and paid a couple $1,000s for her dog to get surgery. She was still quite angry and has been giving me the silent treatment for the past day. My parents don't see the problem. Her parents understand my perspective, but think I should have told her when we moved in together last year. None of our friends know because I don't feel comfortable talking about it with them. I've already asked her if we can talk about it when she's ready, and she just said that she'll let me know when she is. I don't think this is relationship ending, but I know she probably wants me to admit I was wrong. I don't think I've done anything wrong, so I'm asking you guys more so out of curiosity for what others think. Not the jerk. And for the love of goodness, do not marry her without a prenuptial agreement. Don't say you haven't been warned. Exactly. She's upset because she's thinking of what she could have been doing with that money. Don't marry without a prenup. Exactly. Her thought is, but I could have done so much with that money. Not the jerk. Why is she upset? You need to ask her this and listen closely to her response. She may think that because you have a comfortable savings, you should have been paying more of the rent or bills. This isn't true. You pay your way with your earnings, not your savings. Knowing about your savings should not change any part of her life at all. So why is she mad? What difference does it make? If anything, this is a happy surprise. Had you been drowning in debt, she would have reason to be annoyed. As it is, though, what's her problem? Only thing I could think of is she wants him spending more money on her if he's got that kind of cash saved up. Not the jerk. Get a new fiancé. This one is not ready to be an adult. My entitled roommate is pregnant and I don't want to live with her anymore. Me, female 22, and my best friend / roommate, female 23, just got a new place together in the beginning of December of 2021 and everything was going great. That was soon short-lived when she told me that she might be pregnant. After taking 3 tests, it was confirmed that she was pregnant. I asked her if she thought she was ready for a baby, and she said she had no choice since she does not believe in getting rid of it. She was very excited, and naturally I was happy, but extremely shocked because she's still very young, has not finished school, and her and the baby's father, male 46, are not together as he lives an hour and a half from where me and her stay now. After finding out she was pregnant, she quit her job, claiming that she's going to find a new one because she's too sick. 2 months later, and she still does not have a job and can barely pay her half of the rent. Her family pays the rent, car note, insurance, and just about anything else you can think of, even though they don't have it. Her father recently passed, so her mom pays my best friend's bills and the bills her father left behind when he passed. Her mom always tells her that she needs to get a job because she's always giving her last money to her daughter. But she is unfazed by these conversations as if she has nothing to worry about. I asked her what her plan was, and she says she plans to stay in this apartment with me and the baby while working and doing school at the same time. Her family lives far, and so I asked her what she planned to do for childcare, and she said she refuses to let anyone watch her kid and she won't do daycare until he or she is able to talk. After really contemplating on whether I wanted to live with a baby or not, I decided that it might not be the best thing for me. One day she was on the phone with her mother, telling her that she wanted her kid to be in a private school. Her mom said that she was going to have to pay for it herself because her mother was not going to pay it. My friend's response was that her mom didn't have to worry about it because myself and her will be taking care of the tuition for the baby. I was very taken aback by this because I did not agree to this or anything to do with the baby. I feel like if I stay, I'm going to put myself in a terrible situation. I'm still a student at university and I am in my pre-medicine program. This is very important to me as I want to become a doctor in the future. However, I feel like the baby is going to disrupt a lot of my studying or resting time because that's what babies do. She's due to have the baby in September, however, the lease does not end until January of 2023, so I will have to live with her and the baby until then. I haven't told her my plans yet because I know she will take this very personally and we still have 11 months until the lease ends. But am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Run far and fast. She will dump everything she can on you. Talk to your landlord about your options. Talk to your landlord ASAP and also look through your lease agreement if you're allowed to sublet or break it. Your grades will suffer when your roommate tries to push responsibility of the baby onto you. Don't tell her anything until you have another place ready for you to move into. Otherwise, for revenge, she might destroy your things. Tell lies to the university to get you into trouble. Tell your friends and classmates lies to make them hate you or pressure you to help her, etc. Not the jerk. Leave before the baby is born, like ASAP. She will guilt you when she gets big and daily tasks are harder. She will guilt you during her recovery after birth. She will guilt you with the reality of motherhood and she gets stressed out. You will say, I can't leave a pregnant friend. You will say, I can't leave a friend that just gave birth. You will say, I can't leave a friend that is struggling with a newborn. Talk to your landlord. Not the jerk. Does your friend follow a lot of influencers who talk about manifesting their ideal lives or something? Because your friend seems to be living in a delusional world where all the money and support she needs to survive will just magically appear. In reality, she's just using people. She's using her mom currently, and she has plans to use you. You cannot allow that to happen. It's just unfortunate that you're stuck on the lease for almost another year. Do you have family close enough that you could stay with them, or at least on weekends, before the baby arrives, and until your lease is up and you can move out? It's not ideal by any means, but the easiest way to avoid being roped into unpaid childcare by your friend is to simply never be there. OP. She is definitely the quick money scheme type of girl, always trying things that never work out. Unfortunately, I don't have any family to go live with. I just got out of foster care recently and didn't have a place to go. I found a temporary place, and after trying options for a more permanent place, she was my only option. So instead of becoming homeless, I opted for her as my roommate under the condition that her mother be on the lease as collateral for myself, because I know me and her mother were more financially responsible. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. I wouldn't want to live with her either. Maybe she can go live with that dude who's twice her age who knocked her up. Am I the jerk for refusing to sign anything for my husband while my eyes are blindfolded? Ever since I got out of the hospital for chronic problems, my husband has been introducing me to some games every evening. One game used to be about doing things while my eyes are blindfolded, involving puzzles, Rubik's Cubes, shaped objects, etc. We'd take turns to do it just for entertainment. Just a couple of days ago, he's been trying to get me to sign papers while wearing a blindfold. I refused to do it because he never lets me take a look at what I'm signing, neither before or after. He says that he was just trying to see if I could leave the same signature every time I sign, but I couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. I told him I don't want to play this game unless and until he shows me the papers first. He said, Never mind then, and stopped bringing it up. Last night, he tried to convince me to give it a try and even volunteered to go first. I asked if he was going to show me what I was going to sign, and he made a face and said no. It's the rules and I should respect them. I refused, and he kept on about how I keep acting worried and suspicious for no reason. He said I clearly don't trust him, and he was hurt by finding that out now after everything we've been through. We had an argument, and I told him to drop it and not bring it up again, period. He was mad, despite saying it was no big deal. He was obviously upset with me and kept talking about how I don't trust him and that I was out of line to assume or suspect anything from him like this. I might be paranoid, but I couldn't help it. I do think I was the jerk after he stood by my side when my own family didn't even visit. Not the jerk. This is extremely suspicious. Obviously, he wants you to sign something important. Financial documents, loan, will property, divorce papers. List could be endless. Do not sign anything blindfolded. I would add, do not sign on any blank papers from now on. OP. This is what I suspected, but I couldn't tell him because he might think I don't trust him. He already does, but I didn't want to make it obvious. It's not his fault because I easily distrust everyone due to my past. It all just depends on the situation I'm in. This is perfectly normal thing to not trust. Either he is gaslighting you about it, or he is somehow completely ignorant of how this is coming across. Unlikely. The fact that he pushed the issue is so suspicious. At the very least, it's a red flag for personality. Much more concerned that he's hiding something big. The fact he brought it up again, I could, possibly, see the first time thinking it's a fun challenge, but then be like, oh, that does seem weird. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. Homeboy's definitely up to something. This sounds exactly like something I would do to Reddit boy. I was forced to eat at fancy restaurants for a month. Many years ago, I got put on a work assignment for months that required me to travel to New York City and stay every Monday through Friday. I was assisting a company manager with a project, and my hotel was near his regular office in the theater district. If you are not familiar, the theater district is heavily built for tourists. Restaurants are generally kind of fancy and expensive. There were really not any quick and cheap options for dining in that area. The company had a generous meal policy of up to $30 to $40 a meal for travel expenses. I did use that for a bit, but the food got to feeling too indulgent and kind of ridiculous given it was an extended assignment. Also, I was working really long hours and did not want to go sit in restaurants. I just wanted to go watch TV and sleep in my room. So after the first week or so, instead I went to a grocery store on Monday night. I bought some basics for cereal, sandwiches, and snacks, and some frozen meals I could microwave for lunch in the office. It cost about $60. I then took a few cans of soda from my hotel fridge to make room for my weekly food purchase and returned them before checking out at the end of the week. And that was it for food costs, with an occasional meal out here or there. I did the same the next 4 weeks, submitted my expense report at the end of the month. You know where this is going. A lady from accounting called and refused to reimburse my expenses because $60 is more than $40, the max allowance for a meal purchase. I explained that had covered 5 days of food, but was told it didn't matter. I then spent the next month trying all the food in the neighborhood. There really were not any cheap options. I went out to eat a few mornings, lunch whenever I found time, and dinner absolutely every day. I could have bought a few installments of groceries, but the once-a-week shopping convenience was part of why I'd wanted them. It had also seemed wasteful to me to go out for an expensive meal every night for long-term travel, but now I'd been told that was preferred by accounting to my grocery bills. The next month, I got a call from my New York City manager asking how I'd run through more budget every week of the month than the entire month before combined. I explained the grocery situation, and he thanked me and hung up. About 10 minutes later, that same lady from accounting called me to tell me that they'd pay my still not reimbursed grocery bill, and any going forward as long as the daily amount averaged for the week was under the aggregate meal allowance. I happily returned to a more reasonable diet.
Karen attempted a divorce scam that totally backfired on her. She planned to use her husband's money as much as she could before she left him. You gotta come check this out right here, the video that just popped up on the screen. Just tap this button right here and we'll see you when you get there.